Hey guys, this is a compilation video of all 10 Hunter x Hunter chapter reviews I have done over the course of this batch's run, so you can get a nice batch of chapters in one singular video, so I really hope you enjoy. I can't wait to see you guys for the next batch of Hunter x Hunter chapters that will be released whenever Togashi comes back from his brief hiatus. Now then, enjoy. Hunter x Hunter is officially back from a 2-year hiatus, and I am so happy to finally come back and talk about Hunter x Hunter, one of my all-time favorite anime and manga of all time. Now, if you've been around for the channel for over 2 years now, you would have known that I actually covered the last batch of Hunter x Hunter chapters for the most part, but I ended up stopping due to, copyright stuff from Shueisha, which is why I'm doing this type of video content on the channel more for my chapter reviews to help avoid that, so I can actually talk about the stuff that I actually want to talk about and not have to worry too much about things. But this chapter, best chapter to start things off. Explosive chapter, even though it wasn't action-based. It had a bunch of reveals. We had some good artwork from Togashi, and this makes the Succession contest even bigger and more complex than I initially thought, but not in a way that I would actually complain about, because this exposition and the information that we got in this chapter makes this even more interesting, and I like the Succession contest. It's very interesting with strategy and negotiations, but this throws a wrench in things. This makes things more interesting to the point where I'm like, this information could not only either expand it, but also potentially end up making the Succession contest quicker than we initially thought. So I'll get into that when we get into the actual chapter. Before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and showcases you guys enjoy the content I make on the channel and shows you want to see more. Also, if you want to see me talk about other anime and manga, go and check out my manga podcast, The Shonen Pulse, over on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me, Yatogami, Papa Trophy, and Nox talk about a bunch of different manga from multiple different magazines that aren't Hunter x Hunter. So you'll have a good time. I want to try and get that to over 1,000 by the end of the year in terms of subscribers. It's a lot of fun. You guys will definitely enjoy it. We go in-depth on all of these different chapters to an absurd degree, and it is a lot of fun. But out of the way, let's jump into the chapter. Actually, before I want to jump into the chapter, let me just add something, because Togashi has actually stated he wants to get the chapter 430 by the end of the year, meaning that he wants to have 30 chapters done in publication by the end of the year. Right now, I believe he's already finished about 20 chapters, up to chapter 420, and he's about starting chapter 421, 422, I believe. So, if he does get up to chapter 430 and then goes for a break for a few months or another year, if anything, which I say good, if you're going after a 2-year hiatus, you're going to get 30 chapters, I say take a break. If you need to take another break, go right ahead. Hunter x Hunter fans fully understand that Togashi definitely needs that break. But if he does do that, we got 30 chapters of Hunter x Hunter. That's like not counting breaks from the magazine's basic breaks, that's like about 5 months worth of Hunter x Hunter content. That's bad math, but that's just a guesstimate at this point. We just do 30 straight weeks of Hunter x Hunter. But yeah, about 5 months or so roughly almost half a year, which is crazy to think about. And that's the most Hunter x Hunter chapters we've gotten in a little while since that 4-year break a couple of years back. But man, this is crazy. I'm so happy, and I cannot wait to talk more Hunter x Hunter, because if this does well and if I'm able to keep this up, we're going to be talking Hunter x Hunter a lot more. But moving on to the chapter, we're going to end up starting off with Kurapika's divination tests. And we actually meet a new bodyguard who is working with the 5th Prince Tebeppa and actually wants to start a alliance, a peace treaty with Kurapika. Heck, in order to foster trust, she ends up revealing that she is an end user, not the one that is using the snakes, which we all know is the assassin that is using the Nen ability, Silent Majority, to kill off people in the Nen class that Kurapika is doing, to sow dissent and also question Kurapika and see what's going on. Because it'll end up stopping the stalemate that Kurapika is aiming to do by teaching everybody Nen, and there'll be no real advantage in terms of surprise. Obviously, First Prince Benjamin's other guards are definitely picking up on this and noticing what's going on and how this can end up playing out with this character revealing Nen. Yeah, she wants to end up starting a treaty, but ends up talking about her Nen ability, which is called Moonlight Decree. It can bestow or limit the power of whoever signs the contract. And so she essentially wants this to be a way to foster trust, but also wants to tell kurapika her true goal. The 5th prince doesn't know that she is a nen user, so this is definitely a bit of a secret. We'll definitely end up playing a bit more once we get into the contract. Kurapika brings out his nen chain to discover whether or not that she's lying, to perform the test of telling truth and all that, to figure out if she is going to be telling the truth. He does pull up a gun, but like she stated, a gun isn't really going to do much to a nen user, especially since she knows how to use 10. But Kurapika says that his ability is for disclosing truth, basically sufficient for creating a simple contract between the two of them. Either way, she states that her true goal requires that she give Kurapika even more power, which is why she wants him to listen to her full explanation on things before signing. And she drops the bombshell that she is beyond Netero's biological daughter. That is a big bombshell, because she ends up revealing that there are a lot of children that Beyond Netero has essentially birthed over the years. Many. Whenever there's a new prince, essentially, which is crazy to think about. She goes on to say that the plan was essentially for them to eventually become the prince's royal guards. Having awakened their nen at birth. Very important. Their nen at birth is when they got their at birth is when they ended up awakening their nen. They would easily pass the military tests because they have enhanced physical abilities due to nen making things a lot easier, as long as there were no complications or anything out of the ordinary. She understood the true origin when she noticed that she hadn't inherited any traits from her adoptive father, so she knew something was up. She came to the conclusion that getting close to the future king must have been Beyond's goal, when she realized that all of his children had ended up in similar position. Now, that was the original plan. It's as she heard from a conversation between Beyond and her adoptive father. But they knew nothing of the true origins of the other siblings. Heck, even when she found out, she didn't really grasp the importance of it. She just thought it was basically something as a soldier with the unique past that, at least until the selection war ended up beginning. She states that she moved into the dormitories before she could develop much of a relationship with her parents. Maybe because of that, she never really doubted their fanatical speeches about Beyond, and as they were just part of the government's brainwashing to reach a world unified under King, which the fact that dormitories showcase how great Beyond is shows just how much he's wormed his way into their culture and has just adopted things and has changed things with his strong relationship with the royal family and the king. The Bodyguard goes on to states that, as she said, they awakened their nen at birth. And once nen is awakened at birth, most likely forcefully, they will immediately be able to activate 10 and Zetsu in order to rapidly protect them from any real harsh fatigue from awakening their nen. So as we all know, there is definitely fatigue once you awaken nen. But apparently, a way to get around that is awakening it at birth, because you'll instantly go into 10 and Zetsu naturally to compensate and to protect from that harsh fatigue. And that ends up enhancing the physical abilities, because, nen users can end up augmenting their physical abilities by the manipulation of their nen and aura to do a lot more superhuman feats, or to do more than the average person. So with this, the plan for Beyond was to have his kids essentially pass through all the physical assignments at the academy with baseless ease. But there was a side effect, as he states that her father had placed a curse on them. And man, this is very trippy. Now, I'm going to state verbatim what essentially she ended up coming to the conclusion to this when it came to her sister, and then get into the curse itself. So, she states verbatim, "It was my half-sister Mahaka who caught on first. She graduated from the second term, famed for its harshness, thanks to the second Prince Camilla, who just allowed discriminated individuals to join the royal army. She ended up noticing her parents started acting strangely after she dropped out. It was during her search for answers that she discovered that she was also posted as in Prince Camilla's squad. Only after the seat earn ritual began that they understood why they had highly renowned nen users inspect it. And it seems that the siblings were marked with seals. The Bodyguard goes on and states that each one of them has been cursed with a terrifyingly dark nen that activates after their deaths. And so she asks Kurapika, please, use Gyo and take a look. She opens her mouth, and within these pages and panels we get closer and closer close-ups of her mouth, revealing underneath her tongue. And man, when Togashi really, and I mean when he really wants to give us some sort of body horror, he will do it. So detailed. Like, legitimately, it's terrifying to see. Well, yeah, we see a nen mark for this nen curse underneath the Bodyguard's mouth, thus showcasing us a visual representation of this curse. And it is, yeah, it's terrifying. Very terrifying. So apparently the user claims that she's an appetizing sacrifice. What that means is just she's a potential sacrifice for whatever Beyond's grand plan is. It is just an assassination target with herself as the actual weapon, because there must be many of these appetizing sacrifices, and it's only natural to think that there must be even more of these unappetizing sacrifices as well. Her guess is that Beyond prepared many pawns to counter any number of princes. And what's interesting is that apparently burning or removing the parts that were cursed won't do anything. The curse marks will remain, and apparently Beyond converted them into the most efficient envoys of his curse. They're living sacrifices for whatever his plan is. She doesn't know what this ability truly is and who the actual target will be, but she's certain that they've been possessed in order to curse this specific person to death. Kurapika is asked by Bill, or at least, well, stated by Bill, if they take too long, people are going to get antsy and they're going to get suspicious. But Kurapika ends up stating that, okay, right now that is true, but we got to hear more of this to figure things out, otherwise he can't fulfill the contract and get into this alliance with Tebepa. The Bodyguard continues to state that thanks to her half-sister Mahaka, Beyond didn't initiate any moves when she was released as a private guard, suggesting that their targets aren't necessarily the princes that these specific characters were assigned to. In fact, being close to the princes and by extension becoming a soldier in the first place might have been superfluous. Them becoming soldiers at the end of the day probably wasn't even fully necessary to begin with. They've had their entire lives manipulated from the moment of their birth by just incredibly cunning and just long con doing man that is beyond Netero. I just cannot believe how much he is planning ahead and how many pieces he's placed into this. So yeah, even beyond Secret Children to an extent, don't even know the actual target of this nen curse. But she does have a hypothesis that really does cement things. She states that the numbers can't be a coincidence. There are over 10 of these appetizing sacrifices and 14 princes. So it can't be sure who will essentially be killed, but it's clear that Beyond has a strong conviction to end the succession war. Most likely to have a specific, something that is mentioned most likely will get tied in, is that maybe an actual prince specifically is someone that he wants to win the succession war, and added his kids with these curses to make it easier on this specific person to win the war. And so they go over who it could possibly be, and Kurapika ends up coming up with the fact that maybe it's first Prince Benjamin, as if Beyond wants to get closer to the throne, the best choice would be Prince Benjamin. But the Bodyguard says that probably isn't the case, because Beyond is a very cunning, cold-hearted person that has so much time to prepare. He wouldn't go with the easiest target out there. That wouldn't be his style. And it's then that Kurapika notices and figures out what this Bodyguard is implying, stating that one of the princes of Kakin might actually be one of Beyond's children as well. So not only do we have a bunch of princes that are being targeted in a killing game to see who is the next king of Kakin. Not only in this chapter did we get the realization that a number of bodyguards and soldiers in Kakin, up to a number of princes, are Beyond's biological children. But now, it is being stated that it's very likely that one of Beyond's children is also a prince of Kakin in the Succession War. This is unheard of. This isn't something that any of us have speculated, and this is a massive twist to throw at us after this break. Kurapika tries to confirm things with Queen Oito if this is possible with the conditions of the Succession War. She states that only Nasubi's legitimate children can participate, but she says, I suppose that could include children not actually fathered, not actually biologically the king's children. And it was actually stated at the beginning of the Succession War, because I look back, I did see like a thread on this. It was stated that they had to be the children of the illegal queens, like Queen Oito. Quite obviously can enter into the Succession War. So it doesn't matter if the actual child of Nasubi is one of the participants, is one of the princes, as long as they were raised and they are a legitimate child of one of the actual queens. So yeah, that is a massive loophole in the succession contest that Beyond Netero is quite literally taking advantage of to end up winning. That is insanity. So yeah, that is something I did not expect to do. But we also essentially get Kurapika trying to lay people at ease when they're being asked that they're taking too long. He comes out and just flat out states, they're figuring out a contract for a peaceful resolution. They're trying to come up with a treaty. So don't worry, we'll be finished soon. And Benjamin's guards are wondering what's going on. It doesn't seem like silent majority is being used in there. And it doesn't seem like there's any signs of a Nen battle. It seems like this might actually be a flat-out conversation. But back in the room, Kurapika goes on to further ask for more explanations and to keep going. So we end up going to the contract of sorts with this Nen ability, saying that her contract is a alliance between the 5th Prince and as well as the 8th Queen Oito and the 14th Prince Wobble. And that this contract prohibits any attacks between the respective queens, princes, or their guards for the remaining time of the Succession War, mainly until one side is out. But it has to be renewed weekly, 9 a.m. on a Sunday at 10:14 every week. And if Kurapika's party infringes on this, then there will be a penalty. 1 week of forced Zetsu is a death sentence if you're stuck on a ship with a bunch of Nen users. If you don't have access to your Nen, you're donezo completely. And Kurapika knows this is a very big risk. But Kurapika also asks a very important question. Would any type of cooperative Nen being used on somebody be viewed as an attack? But the Bodyguard states that as long as it's not intentionally being used to harm somebody, like for healing, it'll be fine. So there won't be any real repercussions if you try and heal someone or support them with Nen. But she ends up stating that the 5th Prince won't nullify the contract one-sidedly. And she herself cannot activate the ability herself either. She also ends up adding some additional things. If Tepepa ends up retiring from the Succession War, as well as just the remaining competitors being 2 before Beyond's child has been found, as additional amendments to this contract. On the off chance that none of the princes are applicable, then the criteria will be met and a boon will be applied. Seemingly, I believe this is a type of compensation, saying the amendments will be annulled if Tepepa refuses to sign this contract, but if they continue with the inquiry and meet the criteria, she promises to start a new private contract with Kurapika and gives them the added benefit of being able to use her Nen ability one singular time. So if everything is met, if let's say, if they find Beyond's child, if they succeed, if they meet the criteria of this contract, Kurapika will get access to this. And if he starts a contract with somebody else, ideally maybe one of the princes, maybe one of their strong bodyguards, and maybe force them into breaking the criteria, they could end up forcing this powerful opponent, if they manage to get this far, into a forced state of Zetsu, thus making them a non-issue, a non-combatant. And he even states that she's telling the truth, as his chain hasn't budged. But before Kurapika signs this contract, she wants to tell Kurapika her real goal, her true desire for starting this and revealing all this to him. She states that if they find and confirm that one of the princes is Beyond's child, she wants to eliminate that person herself with her own hands. And man, she just exuded a bunch of aura. And I don't mean the actual, aura, the power system of the world of Hunter x Hunter. I mean, actually felt like a force to be reckoned with for a second. We know she's not going to do anything. She doesn't seem like to be an important character. She doesn't seem to be drawn to an extent that she would be an important character. But then again, it's Togashi, and he's already introducing her to introduce all this interesting stuff into the Succession War. She goes on to say that if only her father had shared his intentions with her, even if the role that she has right now as a sacrifice was the same, she wouldn't have ever reached this resolve to take him down, to take out the child that is a prince. Man, that is insane. I did not expect to go in that direction whatsoever. And heck, we even got a bit of Kurapika's chain not moving, showing that she is resolute in her resolve to take out whichever prince is Beyond's child. Whew, man, that is insane. But we move on as the contract seemingly either has been signed or hasn't been signed just yet. I was going to wait to see what's going on with Prince Tabepa, and maybe if Kurapika really did agree to all the terms. We still haven't gotten any full-on confirmation or seeing Kurapika sign. But the bodyguard of Tabepa walks out, and Benjamin's guards notice that her aura hasn't really changed. No signs of an end battle whatsoever, but she's crying, and he goes through a bunch of mental gymnastics, trying to process the information, wondering, was this a fight? Was this the work of an assassin? No. Maybe they were trying to do a contract. Were they actually just doing an actual peace treaty, an actual sign of non-aggression? And so that does seem to be the case, as Kurapika is inviting the next bodyguard for divination. Now what's interesting was we get a bit of a mini panel or a bit of attention to one of Benjamin's guards that is there. The one that has been there more or less from the start with the poofy hair. I keep forgetting his name. There seems to be something up with it. And there is speculation that he might also be just like Tabepa's bodyguard, one of Beyond Netero's children with the sacrifice and all that for one of the princes. That is possible. Maybe he realizes, or maybe he found a way to overhear what was being said inside. Or maybe he just kind of knew. The cat's out of the bag. This doesn't seem like something that's going to be for nothing. So I'm curious to see where this is going to lead, because this is definitely important. Nothing in this arc is not important whatsoever for like 99% of the time. And this information is definitely going to be important for the rest of the series. But we move on to Beyond Netero once more. We finally get to see Beyond for the first time literal years in the manga ever since we set sail on the Blackwell 1, chained up in his cell as he just finished a book. He just seemingly all rough and unkempt. With his long ass hair, he might need a shower from what I could tell with how his hair looks. Or I'm just being dumb. Either way, he's got an insane bedhead. He asks for another book. The Tiger Zodiac is guarding him, but he just tells him no. And even says no to paper and pen, because Beyond might want to write his own book, but for safety reasons, he can't use all that. But Beyond just retorts by saying, safety reasons? Literally, I could use this book to cave in your skull. It's Beyond Netero's child. Yeah, I don't doubt he can do that. But the Tiger Zodiac ends up asking if Beyond wants any requests. But he asks, I'd like to meet somebody. And that kind of ends the chapter right there. Not only did we get the reveal that Beyond has multiple children within the Kakin Empire that had their nen awakened at birth, had a curse placed on them that once they die, they will basically kill whatever target there is. And also the fact that it's per prince, seemingly, but also the fact that one of the princes might also be one of Beyond's children. That is crazy. Now, obviously, people are going to think maybe Tserriednich. He's very gifted. He's very powerful. He's a specialist. That might be the case. But Togashi might throw a curveball. Maybe it's Wobble, the person that Kurapika is guarding, because the contract literally is Chekhov's gun. Somebody is going to be placed in a forced to Zetsu for a week. That is most likely going to happen. It might be Kurapika. Crazy to think about, but that might be the case. And I'm curious to see if that will happen. But with the idea of Beyond just playing the long con in the Kakin Empire, altering things, weaseling his way into its political structure, into the royal family, having a child with one of the queens, and having them be part of the succession contest, and setting things up to potentially end this for maybe his own child to become the king, to become the new king, and set things up. Maybe he'll want to have something within the Kakin Empire, which will in turn help with his expedition of the Dark Continent. A whole lot of stuff just occurred here. Now, with the reveal of Beyond Netero's kid and Beyond wanting to meet somebody, It'll either be a prince, it'll either be a bodyguard, maybe another Zodiac member. Who knows? There is a lot of possibilities that might get revealed next chapter, or we'll cut to maybe Hisoka for all we know. But yeah, crazy chapter, crazy reveals, and I'm wondering what's going to happen next. The Beyond Netero child thing, it might be used for Togashi to either expand the arc even more, or use as a way to cleverly somehow find a way to make things go even quicker. Like once we discover the child, maybe Beyond will talk to his child, maybe come up with a master plan to end the succession war even quicker, and reach his Claymaster a lot faster than initially intended. But again, we still have the Mafia stuff, we still got the Phantom Troop, we still got Hisoka, so we'll still get all that shit going on with the succession war at the exact same time, so this arc ain't ending anytime soon. But I am happy Hunter x Hunter is back. This was a really great and engaging chapter throughout to come back to. Togashi's arc has been on point. It has been consistent. We didn't just get plain text for the entire chapter or for like a good portion of the chapter. We had good artwork. It just felt like, it feels like Togashi might have found his rhythm for the most part at this point. And I'm happy for that. But what do you guys feel about this chapter? How do you feel about these reveals that we got? How do you feel about the implications of Beyond Netero having kids in the Kaken Empire, being soldiers with their sacrifices, and maybe one of the princes being one of his children? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like this type of video, I'm going to be covering Hunter x Hunter weekly. I don't think all of them are going to be almost 30 minutes long, but we'll see based on the information that we get in each chapter. But I'll try and keep things more brief so you guys aren't bored. But that's all I got to say for you guys. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows that you guys enjoy the content on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day. Hunter x Hunter chapter 402 is officially out, and this was a very dense chapter. I'm not going to lie to you guys. There is a lot that happens here, so I might have to cliff notes a lot of it. Otherwise, we'll just ramble on and on throughout this entire thing. But before I just start going into that chapter, I just do want to say that I am going with the official translations for Hunter x Hunter from now on. So videos are going to be coming out on Mondays or Tuesdays for these reviews. I know it's later than last time, but I want to get the official translations because chapter 401, the translations were not good. In fact, a lot was mistranslated and was not portrayed well. Some examples are the fact that I'm just going to give you brief examples of what exactly was not done right, so like we can move on to the actual chapter so I can clarify some things. 1. Beyond Netero doesn't want to end the succession war. He wants to influence it in his own manner. That is one of the first things. The next one is the fact that, for one, Longhe's Nen ability was conditional upon giving favor to Kurapika and telling the truth. So giving Kurapika her Nen ability to use is part of the condition, as well as the fact that her telling the truth seems to be part of the condition for her Nen ability. So that is something that's a lot more clarified. Same with the fact that Longhe did not overhear or eavesdrop a discussion between Beyond and her adoptive father, as that implied that she met Beyond. No. She was told this by her parents, so that is also a very important piece of information. We also get a bit more in-depth on Longhe's theory about the fact that her siblings are mostly all in the Royal Guard. At least at this point, all of them are Royal Guardsmen, and we all know there's at least 20 to 30 of Beyond Netero's children that are potentially in this whole thing. So, yeah, that is a lot of information that was not portrayed super well. And there's also the fact that 100% confirms that they have to be the child of the illegitimate queen. That's something that's 100% confirmed. I don't know. I don't remember if I confirmed that or not, but it didn't seem like the way it was worded in the fan translation. So the official translation is more obvious that it has to be the queen to be the parent of the princess to be in the succession war, not the father being King Nasabi. Alright? That is all of the stuff that I have to say right now. If there's anything I missed, those are what I caught so far. Let me know in the comments below. Now then, let's get right into chapter 402 of Hunter x Hunter, and like I said, very dense. Before all that, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. The last Hunter x Hunter video did very well, so I'm hoping this continues to do well because I love Hunter x Hunter and I want to keep making videos on this as well. And I'm just having a lot of fun with this. So let's jump right into the chapter with chapter 402 of Hunter x Hunter, titled the letter. Now, basically, this chapter starts off with the 3rd Prince Zhang and the 5th Prince Tebekba all in their own rooms, discussing the true ceasefire between these two, as well as Wobble, as well with Kurapika. So they're discussing how they're all essentially coming into terms with this alliance, and the conditions for it, like Prince Wobble and Queen Oito being accompanied by Kurapika every single time they want to renew the contract, every single time as a condition and stipulation, like we previously explored in the previous chapter, in order to keep things going. And that they're more than welcome to bring the prince. Now we do have Raihan there, one of Prince Benjamin's men, who actually defeated a guarded spirit beast and helped in the actual assassination of one of the princes. I'll get into that in a second when we talk about it in a sec. Zhang Lei is still wondering what exactly his coins do, but he realizes that they won't do nothing for him, but only for people who he gives the coin to. So he's kind of hoping that it gives more than just a standard benefit to his followers or whoever he gives the coins to. He's also thinking about whether or not a semi-surrender, like what's going on with Wobble and perhaps Tebekba, to really be part of leaving the succession war, but best to keep it in their back pocket and have that as a potential possibility. Tebekba is going over the fact that since 4th Prince Tserriednich did not make it to the banquet, which a whole lot of stuff happened with Melody and her flute playing and him learning his parallel future. I'm not going to get into that now, but that's the main reason why Tserriednich didn't show up for the banquet. So Tebekba assumes that their truce is off, or he was not interested in their truce whatsoever. But she states that she kind of wants her bodyguards to leave an impression upon Benjamin's guards in the then class that Kurapika is doing, that they're very close to the 3rd Prince, to kind of move Benjamin's attention from her to Zhang Lei, to kind of get some of the heat off of her. And it's after this that Tebekba's Nen Beast shows up. Her Guardian Spirit Beast shows up out of nowhere. And so Raihan is beginning to think, what could it be? What triggered its materialization? And he comes to the conclusion that it is conditional. And so this ends up being bad news for Tebekba, because the more Raihan learns about his opponent's Nen or the Guardian Spirit Beast, the more effective his Nen ability Predator will end up being within taking it out. That's how they took out Sully's Nen Beast and how it opened up the possibility to kill him. So the best thing for Tebekba is for her Guardian Spirit Beast to not do anything, but that's going to be very hard, because this guy is very, very perceptive, and he'll probably figure it out over time with the more information he gets. His ability is perfect for assassination attempts. So yeah, there's a lot. And if Tebekba's taken out, the Moonlight contract from Long He will be null and void, and so Kurapika won't get access to that ability, and so a lot of things will go wrong potentially with that. We then cut to Milko, I think that's his name, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, who is Prince Benjamin's basically second in command. As he pulls out some vials, as it turns out he's looking over a military-grade bioweapon essentially, and he calls it more like the Silent Killer. It was a failure with flaws, but it seems to mimic the stomach flu, but with how it operates, it could kill somebody within 2 hours. It could end up ruining body functions, organ failure, and can hasten decay. So this is literally like almost the perfect thing to use for an assassination attempt that could potentially be seen as something completely different. And especially the fact that he wants to use it to take out the 9th Prince Hulkenberg. Now, if I remember, Hulkenberg's Nen ability that he seemingly awakened allows his followers to transfer between bodies. Whatever damage one body gets, it's transferred to the original body. It's a whole big thing. We could go over that, and I could probably go into that with an entirely different video. All I know is the Hulkenberg is strongest when he's around his followers, and that's when he can utilize his Nen ability to the fullest. We also don't know fully what Hulkenberg's Guardian Spirit Beast ability truly is, so there's that to consider as well. And the fact that they're being so cautious with Hulkenberg shows that he is definitely one of the bigger threats within the Succession War, especially the fact that Benjamin doesn't know Tserriednich's Nen ability yet. So, yeah, there's that. So this I see as probably the perfect way to really deal with Hulkenberg, which, as messed up as it sounds, it doesn't seem like he can actually be dealt with in a straight-up fight with how his Nen ability works, especially the fact his Nen ability is unguardable, can go through any defense, seemingly. So yeah, that seems to be the case. We then cut over to Tserriednich now, who is essentially practicing more and maintaining his Zetsu. And we have a whole new bodyguard who's training him in Theta's stead. And so Tserriednich is essentially working on maintaining Zetsu while doing multiple tasks on a treadmill, playing games, and even having a conversation with one of his own bodyguards about what's going on with Melody. And all the other princes trying to get into Melody's custody after everything that happened with Melody playing her flute, her song over the speakers and putting everyone seemingly in a trance. So everyone wants to get a hold of Melody, same with Tserriednich, and a whole bunch of stuff happens. But the bodyguard is wondering what's going on with the spirit beast, because that seems to happen during Zetsu. And he tries to go over what Theta is saying and how this is presented. Now, with such a lack of information, all he can really go for is the fact that that Theta has told him this stuff, and even then, her information might not be fully accurate. So there's still a lot more to really think about, especially the fact that, well, like I said, what Tserriednich is doing to maintain his Zetsu training and maintain Zetsu is just borderline incredibly difficult for most people, considering that he's doing all this within 10 seconds, maintaining Zetsu within 10 seconds, doing multitasks. And this could take months for people that he could do in a single day. He's a literal monster when it comes to learning Nen. He's a literal prodigy among prodigies that could probably put Isaac Netero to shame, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, his whole thing really gets the guy down and really puts him down. I'm like, you make me feel bad. I feel like a failure in comparison to you. But with Tserriednich, I can get into a whole different video with him because his ability only activates during Zetsu, so what if outside Zetsu he learns an entirely different Nen ability? That's something I'm really thinking about and could potentially be the case. But yeah, Tserriednich is definitely a major player that we all know about. He's a literal monster. We get reminded of that, but he's still making faster progress with his training. So yeah, let's move on because Tserriednich, a lot's going on. We got back to Melody and Kacho, who were talking about Fugetsu, as Kacho has found that there is some sort of mark on Fugetsu's body, which she thought was like a bug bite. But no, it seems to be some sort of injection. But the possibility with how things have been like with how they've gone to the room and back without any real way for somebody to inject her, potentially in her sleep, with Kacho more or less being with her all the time, it could be an ability made by Nen. And since some Nen, especially trap-based Nen, require multiple steps, it's very likely that it happened more recently and it was accidentally triggered by Fugetsu. It doesn't seem to be a targeted trap, Nen trap towards Fugetsu, and that could have something to do with her potentially getting that boost of energy to do her ability multiple times a day. And the more she uses it, the more her life force will sap and her sanity and her mentality will end up diminishing. So she won't last a week if this goes up. So they have to try and find a way for who is responsible. After all, and the fact that this is an injection, the thought of a drug is brought into play, and the possibility is definitely there. So they have to try and figure out what's going on. So right now, with everything going on with Fugetsu, to try and keep her alive and to keep her safe, they have to find out who exactly is doing this, or at least whose ability this is stemming from. So Kacho has an idea of who it could be, and it might be Prince Lazarus. He's got connections to the Mafia, he deals with drugs. Everything seems to fit, but they still don't know if this is either his guardian spirit beast doing or somebody working under him, and if he's even conscious of what's going on if it is his guardian spirit beast. So the only real way to find out is if they can somehow just knock him out, beat him, or just defeat his guardian spirit beast itself. So they have to take action right away. But they do need a plan. And so Kacho does have a plan based on how they've been testing out the doors. Whenever Fugetsu opens a door, it closes once she goes in. But whenever they're leaving a place, the door closes when Kacho goes in. And so they're trying to think about how they could use that as a way to potentially have other people go through the door. And if that's the case, they could use that as a way to get Lazarus through a door and perhaps convince him to escape on his own. There's the fact that they basically state that the fact that there might not be a barrier, or there might be a barrier preventing the princes from leaving the Secession War. And also the fact that Fugetsu can't go to places that they haven't been. So that's a whole stipulation of her Nen ability. Now, this all stems on the fact they need somebody to essentially collude with to carry Lazarus through this doorway, and so Kaiser steps up to essentially say he will do this. He will be the mule, and he will also help in order to do the questioning to establish an alibi for Melody, as well as Fugetsu as well. So Kaiser is definitely an interesting character that I'll talk about in a second. Now Kacho, one thing she mentions is the fact that they could just poison or strangle Lazarus, but they can't make it look like murder. Since he does deal in drugs in the Mafia, and the fact that he probably has substances in his room, Kaiser can make it so that they can put it in a way where he died of an overdose after hallucination, with Melody's help causing a hallucination for the guards in Lazarus' presence, and so they can get Lazarus away and keep him unconscious with Melody's song, and so they can make it so that he overdosed from his hallucinations and tried to escape spontaneously under the influence, which it sounds like a solid plan. But the problem is where they'll connect the door. And so they realize that they could actually do this in Lazarus' room. By having Fugetsu go there and actually be present in the room, she could actually open a doorway to the room and thus making this plan plausible. Now, before I go any further, I forgot to mention that Kacho is dead. This Kacho we have right here is her guardian spirit beast turned into her and taking on her personality in order to protect Fugetsu, as Kacho died when they tried to escape the Succession War in the Black Whale chapters ago. So, just wanted to refresh that in case everyone forgot. Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier. And so they come up with the plan for Fugetsu to visit all of the prince's rooms so that she can have multiple options for her Nen beast, for her ability, so she can have escape routes and to go to different princes and figure out what potentially her options can be, either an escape or when they find out who potentially the ability is, so that they could take care of the Nen user or their guardian spirit beast potentially. Now also, it might not be losers of spirit beast, because the spirit beasts, one of their stipulations is that they can't be seen by the princes and they can't actively do anything against the princes themselves. They can't affect any other princes, so which is why they have random out abilities that will affect the Succession War. So it's definitely not Luzer's net ability, but it could be a gray area for all we know. I legitimately don't know. But yeah. So Kacho comes up with the plan to essentially have Fugetsu bring letters to all the princes with Kacho's last words, and with Kaiser there to verify things, it'll make things a bit more official, and so we can use the negotiating skills to try and basically get someone like Fugetsu there, and also make it so that all the princes find it legitimate, and potentially find a way to kind of worm his way into the prince's rooms and figure some stuff out with the princes and confirm some things. Now, we actually get a brief interaction between Kaiser and Melody about everything that's going on, whether him helping them is of his own free will, if he's playing them, because Melody's whole thing is that she can essentially listen to people's hearts, and someone being smitten with her, someone having feelings for her, ever since what happened with the Sonata of Darkness, doesn't seem to be in the cards for her. And since she can't really hear any alterations or fluctuations in his heartbeat, she doesn't really trust him, so she has to consider him on the enemy side and be very, very careful. And so the way Togashi is writing Kaiser right now, it's very likely that he's either under somebody's influence or making it very obvious that he might not be a villain. So we can go the way of either he was a decent guy all along, he was just super suspicious, but he was a decent guy, or he is actually a villain that will screw everybody over at the end of the day for his own purposes. We just don't know. But yeah, he tries to make it so that he wants a better future for Kaking if Fugetsu becomes the new king, but we still have no idea if he is actually serious about this, and if he's just a majorly good liar and can control himself, or he's under someone's Nen ability. We just don't know. We cut a little bit later to Fugetsu and Kaiser walking to Benjamin's room to deliver a letter. And so Benjamin ends up allowing them to come in. Now Fugetsu ends up entering the room to try and give the letter to Benjamin, and he sees the evil spirits around her. He's wondering, wow, she's on her last legs. What could this be? And so as she goes towards Benjamin, his Nen beast ends up showing up behind him and instantly pushes away these evil spirits. And even he notices they're low-level evil spirits that is causing her to be in a weakened state, and that's why they are attracted to her, keeping her in a weakened state, so that it could eventually kill her over time. And that's probably a whole thing after her sister's death. Benjamin opens the letter and ends up stating that it's nothing that pertains to the succession or worth showing, but he ends up giving the letter to Kaiser anyway. But he asks about one of his men, Muse, who he has no idea what's going on with that character, as he asked the Justice Department to look into it. Now here's the thing, they both know this character is dead. I legitimately had to look it up because I completely forgot about this guy. This was chapters ago, and this is what I get for now rereading this entire arc before these new chapters come out. But Muse died trying to kill Second Prince Camilla, but he killed her post-mortem nen activated, killed him, brought her back to life. Benjamin found out because his nen ability ends up getting the abilities of his followers that die, and I believe Kaiser knows because he found the body but refuses to tell Benjamin. That's it. But anyway, back to the content of the letter. He essentially states that there's nothing that qualifies as a national threat, and so it doesn't really become a prerequisite for martial law. That's important. Kaiser brings this up as there are multiple authority levels when it comes to the military, especially with crises, but the fact that Benjamin mentioned martial law, he misspoke, showcases his true vision for what he wants for the nation and what he'll essentially do once he becomes king, and how he'll misuse it, because he seems to be looking for a way to enact martial law. By bringing up martial law, he basically makes it so that, yeah, I want to declare martial law at some point, which will essentially help with my ascension to being king. So, yeah, and the fact that he was so concerned over the evil spirits and Muse and all that, he didn't notice that he misspoke. And so Kaiser definitely managed to do something very impressive. Now we end up cutting to Fugetsu giving more stuff to some of the other princes like Tebeppa and Tyson, but then we cut to Loserus, which is the interesting portion of the chapter. He essentially reads it, says sorry about Kacho's death, and essentially what was written in the letter were essentially like, essentially has nothing to do with succession, so he gives it to Kaiser. And apparently, back in a bit of a flashback, going through this plan, Kaiser told Kacho, the Nenbeast Kacho, what to write. It was essentially getting dirt on all the princes, and essentially writing specific things for each of the princes to kind of get them on edge. Get them a bit on guard to an extent, just enough to get them on guard and to kind of talk to each other or do a bit of a stalemate. Which, very interesting to really bring up. Especially the fact that there's a lot going on, and kurapika is doing its own version of a stalemate. But by having them turn against each other, there's something that could occur here as well. But there's definitely a lot more to go into these letters as well. Now here's the thing. Part of the letter that Loserus got was essentially something like Tserriednich shouldn't be on the throne, etc. And that there's like quote-unquote baseless rumors about Tserriednich that can't truly be proven. But Loserus ends up saying that it could be essentially a defamation campaign as a ploy to get them to dig up the real dirt on Tserriednich. And Loserus says, believe me, there is plenty of stuff to find. But not like I can talk. But Loserus is a lot smarter than we all give him credit for. He seems like a slacker, but the guy, he is working with mafia families. So of course, he's incredibly careful and calculated when need be. And so he questions how it's weird that Kacho put this in her parting messages, nothing about protecting Fugetsu. And so there's definitely something about this, like rattling up the snakes like Tserriednich and Benjamin to go after each other. So there's definitely something amiss about what's going on. So despite the fact that Kaiser, Kacho, and Melody are successfully doing something to rattle some of the princes, or at least get some stuff on them and put them against each other, Loserus knows that something's up and something's weird. So, yeah, that's definitely something to really think about. Now, obviously, he wants to keep the balance thanks to the Mafia families. Little as you know, the Mafia families are at war with essentially each other and the Haley. But he's basically making a play to make them think that he doesn't think anything of the letter, and to essentially maintain his standings right now. Now, as we enter towards the ending portion of this chapter, after everything with Loserus, they try and go and meet with the rest of the princes. But the evil spirits are still hovering over Fugetsu. But then, when Basho ends up showing up, and he actually manages to ward off these evil spirits with his Onen ability, which is the Haiku ability. By giving it a sort of lucky charm to Fugetsu, as long as she has it on her, this will ward off the evil spirits. It's not permanent, but it'll keep her safe a bit longer. And so it's kind of up to Melody to figure out what's going on and to protect Fugetsu from whatever these evil spirits are by figuring out who is in possession of this net ability and who's cursing her. So Basho coming in clutch. Granted, the fact that it's not perfect is the fact that, if we all remember, and I had to refresh myself, his ability is based on haikus and how good they are. And since he's canonically not very good with haikus, this ward is not the perfect. It is not a catch-all. It's not fixing everything. So yeah. Also, something I completely forgot to mention is that Fugetsu doesn't know that Kacho is dead thanks to the Nen Beast that took her place. And so it's essentially being like Kacho telling her that she's pretending to be dead to kind of protect her and also kind of screw over their siblings, kind of think that she's out of the contest, and to hopefully move things along in a manner that could essentially help them. Until eventually she'll just reveal herself. But yeah, a lot of that is circumstantial, and that's why Fugetsu's going along with this, because otherwise she'd be a lot more distraught if her sister was actually dead. As things are coming to a close, but the next morning on Wednesday, Kacho is talking about how Fugetsu should get questioned in the sickbay early in the morning as soon as she wakes up. That way they can get started on the plan, just in case Lazarus isn't the one behind her being sick, which that seems to not be the case. He seems to not know what's going on with her. But by doing this, I was solid alibi with Fugetsu. That way they could eventually pull off the plan to get Lazarus off the ship, or to knock him out, and potentially, hopefully, that be the case to save Fugetsu. But there's still more to really think about in this regard. They think about the rumbling back on Tier 1, which they're not sure what it was about, considering that the only prince there that is in Tier 2 is Hulkenberg, and so that ability must have something to do with him or his guardian spirit beast. But he's the prince that they want to deliver a very important letter to, because his has a bunch of information. One is about Benjamin's secrets, Tserriednich's depravity, and the truth. Interesting, the truth about Hulkenberg's birth. That is very important to think about. Because as we all know, one of the princes is one of beyond Netero's kids. And what this is seemingly leading us to is that Hulkenberg might be one of Netero's kids. He might be the prince that is Hulkenberg might be the prince that is beyond Netero's kid. So that'd be huge. This could be a classic Togashi misdirect, and it could be something completely different, but that would be very interesting. But aside from all of that, there is a lot more for Prince Hulkenberg to learn about, and he'll make use of that'll shake up the Succession War. But there's also one more piece of information in hope for Melody and Fugetsu, and that lies with Kurapika. And this chapter ends with Kurapika getting a letter, which I presume is what Melody's trying to give to Kurapika, eventually stating that as long as the Succession War continues, the princes can't escape the ship. So they have to come up with a way so no more princes have to die, which ends the chapter. So, yeah, like I said, incredibly dense chapter for Hunter x Hunter. And yeah, this video is incredibly long. If I didn't do that brief correction at the beginning, this would be a bit shorter, but yeah. All in all, big cliff notes. Third and fifth prince are colluding to try and get more protection, try and force a stalemate as well. Tobeppa wants to kind of throw a lot of heat onto Zhang-Lei. Raihan is learning more about Tobeppa's guardian spirit beast, putting her in danger and potentially the truce in danger. Balsamilko has a virus that could potentially infect and maybe kill Hulkenberg and even his men, which is probably the perfect counter to his inability. We end up seeing more of Tserriednich's insane growth, with the possibility of us not knowing the full capability of his guardian spirit beast, as well as dramatic irony with no one else knowing what his guardian spirit beast is. And we catch up with the majority of this chapter being talking about Fugetsu's condition, how she's being cursed, her Nen ability going haywire, the fact that it could be a fake Nen ability, which is something I forgot to really dive into, is the fact that it could be a fake that she's using multiple times, giving her extra power so that it can eventually kill her and weaken her mental state more with these evil spirits clinging on to her and thus deteriorating her mental state so much that it could make her die within the next week. We get this brilliant plan with the condition that it might be Prince Lazarus cursing her, or one of his potentially. Learning about her using Fugetsu's Nen ability with all the prince's rooms for multiple options, and coming up with this grand scheme to try and save her and take out Prince Luzerus. And the bombshell at the end of the chapter with a bunch of information about Benjamin's secrets, Tserriednich's depravity, whole bunch of stuff to shake up the Succession War, and Hulkenberg's truth of his birth. So, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot in this chapter, which, like I said, could have been 2 chapters, but I'm glad we got this because that means we could get more in this. And this might end up speeding up the Succession War, because if Hulkenberg, after his slight mental break, or at least epiphany of what he has to do, learns all this information, this could speed up a lot of the conflict for the Succession War, potentially. And a lot of things are going to be like, honestly, I kind of wonder if part of Tserriednich's depravity will be revealed to Kurapika, and once he figures out that Tserriednich has the rest of his people's eyes, hell's going to break loose. And I look forward to how Kurapika is going to react to this, and how this will alter everything that'll occur in this arc. But, yeah, dense chapter, a lot of information to talk about. I enjoyed it, actually. This was very engaging, and I hope it was for you guys, seeing me talk for, like, roughly 30 minutes. But what did you guys think of this chapter? What do you think of all the information that we learned about here? What do you think of Melody's plan with the Nembish, Kacho, and Kaiser to actually work? Do you think it'll work, or do you think it'll backfire, royally screwing up everything and potentially getting Melody in a very worse situation, maybe even ruining things for Fugetsu and the Nembish Kacho? Do you think that Kaiser might secretly be a villain or being manipulated? Those seem to be options that Togashi is giving us potentially. And what do you think the secrets are, and do you think Hulkenberg's truth about his birth might actually be that he's beyond Netero's kid? And how do you think Kurapika is gonna use his information to work with the Succession War? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. I'll try and make more HunterxHunter videos between the chapter reviews. I can't promise that. I have a lot going on. But let's see if I can do some more before the end of the year. But with all that said and done, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and hope you all have an awesome day. HunterxHunter chapter 403 is out, and this was another solid chapter. I gotta admit, I am loving HunterxHunter even more now, and thankfully this chapter was not as dense as the last one. A good fair amount of information was in it, but not so much as I believe this won't be a 30-minute video again. We'll just see how I go with this. But overall, with how things are going, pieces are starting to fall into place. We get to see more of Hulkenberg using his ability. We get to see more of the political structure. We get to revisit the events of the previous chapter from another perspective, and the possibility of Benjamin enacting martial law, as well as the elimination of 1, if not 2 more princes, I'll get into that later, might be the case. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Also, let me know how you feel about the background. I changed it up for a bit, so let me know if you like this better in comparison to the last background. I might start doing it like this in my room from now on, but let me know. Now then, before we get started into this chapter, I do have to elaborate on a mistake I made in the last chapter. And I was assuming that Kurapika didn't know about Tserriednich having the rest of the Kurta eyes. I'll put on screen the commenter that actually pointed this out to me. Sorry if I didn't respond to you. I can't respond to everything all the time, and I had a lot of other stuff going on over the weekend. But yeah, thank you for pointing this out. Kurapika did know about Tserriednich having the rest of the Kurta eyes, but that's why I wanted to go to the 4th Prince, be his bodyguard, try and get them back. Ended up being whole thing ended up becoming wobble. That's my bad. That's a mistake. I didn't mean to come off like that and spreading misinformation about the series. So I apologize for that. I was wrong. I went back to the chapter stated. Yeah, 100% I was wrong. That's what I get for not rereading the last 60 chapters before these new chapters came out for a refresher on every piece of information. So yeah, that's my bad. I'm going to try and see if I can reread some of these chapters during my free time, but I don't know if I can. I'll probably just see what I can do with that. But either way, thank you for pointing this out for me, and again, I'm sorry if I caused any confusion. But moving on with the chapter for chapter 403 of HunterxHunter, it's titled Results. And what's interesting is that this actually takes place 2 hours before the end of the last chapter. Now, something I did not call attention to in the last chapter was the day and the time of everything that was transpiring. Now, with how this whole arc has been going on, going over the course of multiple days for this voyage, dates and times are incredibly important, especially for this one. At the end of the previous chapter, it was stated there was a rumbling on Tier 2, and so it was also assumed that it had to do with Hulkenberg. But now, at the start of this chapter, we cut back to Balsamilko, as he is going to the Justice Department on Tier 2, and this takes place at 6:45 a.m. right in the morning, as he's going to try and make it to Prince Hulkenberg, as he is going to have less guards around him and followers, so it'll probably make it easier for him to go and infiltrate the place to enact his plan. Because, like we saw in the last chapter, he has a vial of a very contagious bioweapon that at very close range, 100% infection rate, and will kill Hulkenberg within like 2 hours. Further away you are from the epicenter of that blast, less likely you are to be infected. And this is like pandemic levels of contagion, so yeah. Also, shout out to Gradline for a New World review, because after my last review I took a look at his video, and apparently there was like TSK17 is the name of the biovirus, and that was removed in English translation, and after this chapter I can see why Pandemic 717, yeah, I could see why that would need to be removed. So yeah, that's very interesting. But moving on, Balsamilko continues to walk down the hallway. He sees two people off in the distance. But then when he turns around, he sees Vict. Now, I forgot who this guy was, but a couple of chapters ago, he is actually someone who went missing from Benjamin's party and one of his soldiers after he was actually possessed by one of Hulkenberg's followers. And thus, we had no idea what happened to him. We just knew he wasn't dead because Benjamin's Nen ability did not gain Vict's Nen ability, so he was stated to still be alive. But after noticing Vict, Balsamilko is wondering what's going on. There's this rumbling, but Hulkenberg doesn't have any of his guards around him. So, with the two people off in the distance, Balsamilko tries to talk to Vict, but Vict goes with military sign language, saying that he knows and figured out Hulkenberg's ability. However, as this rumbling begins to keep going, we then get to see in the next page Hulkenberg readying his Nen arrow for his Nen ability as he is walking towards Balsamilko with a bunch of his followers, with just exuding literal aura as he's charging up his attack. Now, this one panel of Hulkenberg and his followers literally exudes aura. Like, you can feel the tension in the air from this one singular panel. Very impressive. And also something I do want to add here is Hulkenberg in his head literally trying to get the right angle and positioning for his Nen arrow to actually be able to land its mark, which I like because he needs at least good aim to do this. While we all say that it could penetrate any defense and seemingly attack anybody without fail, he's got to get the right timing and angles down so it could actually hit. And then he launches the arrow, as then we cut to Benjamin in his suite. As this is actually during the events, like right before the events of Fugetsu and Kaiser showing up to give him a letter, as he's on the phone with one of his men talking about how Balsamilko has not reported in just yet, and also the fact that everything going on with Melody, trials postponed, and all that stuff. We are still getting a bit of that. But talking about Balsamilko, aka the captain, saying that things haven't gone right due to equipment issues, so Benjamin is thinking that something has gone wrong with the mission, or at least it hasn't gone all the way through. And to see if he was attacked and if his attempt on Hulkenberg's life was a failure. And so he ends up thinking of what this could potentially mean. Was Hulkenberg able to compromise Balsamilko? Was Balsamilko not have the opportunity to actually do anything to Hulkenberg? He doesn't know, so he's running through the option to see if they knocked each other out or anything else. Now we do know that it is stated that Hulkenberg fell ill and he's currently in stable condition at the sick bay. So something did occur, and something that I do want to mention in the last chapter. At the end, it was mentioned there was a rumbling on Tier 2, and the events at the end of the last chapter was 2 hours before what this event that we saw with Hulkenberg and Balsamoko was. So there is a lot going on. And stating that there was also like 10 or so supporters around Hulkenberg when he fell ill and are around him right now, Benjamin comes to the reasonable conclusion that perhaps his followers ended up helping him and are part in an assist of his ability. And rightfully so, as Hulkenberg's ability is only as strong for as many followers that he has. Now, obviously, Benjamin is thinking that things are a trap, that has to be like a fake illness for Hulkenberg, and maybe Balsamoko is compromised, and is wondering what Balsamoko will come up with for how things are going on to see if he is being manipulated by Hulkenberg. And so Balsamoko gets on the phone, tells him he hasn't executed the mission just yet, stating that Netero was fired, but it ended up missing his mark and he lost consciousness. Now this is very good. In terms of building up some mystery as to what is going on right here. And obviously Benjamin is wondering if this is collusion with Hulkenberg or if Balsamoko is being manipulated. And so, worst comes to worst, if either of those possibilities is the case, Benjamin is going to enact martial law and purge both Balsamoko and Hulkenberg. And as you learned at the end of the last chapter, Benjamin is incredibly close to enacting martial law and going full commando on the rest of the ship for the Succession War, and Balsamoko is the only person that has kept him patient from doing any sort of mistakes that would compromise anything. So when Balsamoko gets on the phone, he says that there is actually their chance to actually go through with the plan to go and take out Hulkenberg, to unleash the virus. And Balsamoko states that he's aware that things could potentially be, well, suspicious for him right now, so he gave the condition that he will get results by the end of the day. And even if he doesn't, then assume that he is a traitor or whatever. So, saying the right words and the right reasonings to Benjamin right now. So, Benjamin, at the moment, just has no choice but to really set things into motion. And what happens right now, we end up cutting to 7:50 in the morning, which is a bit later. And so Benjamin ends up having one of his men go check out what's going on with the attack. And also states that for the rest of the men, until they hear back from Balsamoko and see what's going on with Hulkenberg for sure, all the men to be on red alert. And for one of the main signs is if Balsamoko leaves the Justice Department without notifying anyone, that martial law will be declared on tiers 2 and 3 at once. So, yeah, everything's going on exactly like things are definitely going to go wrong. And this is when Fugetsu and Kaiser show up with the letters. And Benjamin's main reason is revealed that he wants to see it because once he becomes king, he's going to need a good relationship with the Justice Department, so it's best for him to see it. We actually cut to one of the rooms with one of the queens, which I believe is Benjamin's mother, the first queen. And it seems she's talking to Hulkenberg and saying, "I'm proud of you, my dear son, if that's your choice," yada yada yada. And in the next page, the letter that Kacho wrote for Fugetsu to deliver to Benjamin states that the first queen is actually Hulkenberg's real mother, and out of fear of being disrespectful, she didn't say anything and kept quiet. And so the first queen asked a favor of the second queen to protect Hulkenberg and to essentially make him lower on the succession totem pole and faking his truth of his birth and who his mother was to kind of keep him safe. Though now it doesn't really mean anything to the Succession War, but the rumors are true and there's a big problem if it is. And that the first queen might be pulling strings for Hulkenberg and colluding with him, which the previous page seems like that might be the case. And one of the last words in the letter is to look after Fugetsu, is what she is telling Benjamin. And so Benjamin just says this isn't really worth anything of politics, mainly just rumors found online, nothing shocking. Which is interesting to see if Benjamin might believe it to a certain extent, or he just truly doesn't believe it and he just sees it as rumors that can be found online. That's interesting to state. But yeah, this, for all we know, can in fact be true, because remember, the Kacho and the Nembeast wrote down all these letters with information that Kaiser, with information from the Justice Department on Durn and all the princes, essentially gave her to write down. So this is most likely 100% true, or at least something that is incredibly likely. And so Kaiser is essentially glad that Benjamin is relatively cautious based on this information, and that he would have liked to shake him for a bit more information about the Queen and all that, but it would definitely backfire if he did. And so, at the very least, he knows that he is very, very close to declaring martial law. So their gamble so far, at least with Benjamin, is paying off to a certain degree. Now we end up cutting to a few more of the princes like Carmilla, Tyson, Tebeppa. So we end up getting a bit of the reactions from second Prince Carmilla, third Prince Zanlei, we got Tebeppa, and we got Tyson. And so we cut back to Melody, Cacho, and Kaiser talking about how it seems like things are going relatively well as they've already set everything up for their plan, getting all the markers in place in all the princes' rooms. So they're stating how basically the ones that really rejected the letter were Hulkenberg, and since he was sick, and also Tserriednich, who Tserriednich either 4D chess, parallel future, read the letter and just made it seem like with that ability that he never read it, or just flat out refused it, or just flat out doesn't care. Tserriednich just doesn't really care about much at all whatsoever. So that's interesting. I wonder if he's doing a 5D chess thing, because the possibility was out there that he could just have used parallel future to just read the letter without reading the letter by looking into a different future. That is a high possibility with all the Nen training that he has done. So yeah, that possibility is incredibly likely. And the other prince, I believe the 13th or 12th prince, the 13th prince, I forgot, the prince that Bisky is guarding along with Hanzo, they're in their own little pocket dimension thanks to that Nen beast, so they wouldn't be able to receive the letter anyway. But right now, things seem to be going relatively well, and so they at the very least are able to get things set up for their mission to basically assassinate a prince, which is 7th Prince Luzerus, as we saw from the previous chapter. So at the very least, they got things set up for the whole Luzerus plot line, and to see if that pays off in the future. But right now we actually have a quick glimpse of Fugetsu in the sick bay, and it seems like she is in relatively bad condition, but it could be a lot worse. The spirits are kind of staying away from her now that they have Basho's haiku ward. If only he was better at haikus, his ability would make it a lot stronger. But that's all we can really hope for now, so we just gotta hope for her to get rest. And so now we know that tomorrow is when they're going to enact their plan to try and take out 7th Prince Luzerus, in the hope that it's possibly his Nen Beast that is essentially affecting Fugetsu in a roundabout way. Which, again, Nen Beasts, the Guardian Spirit Beasts, though the princes can't harm other princes. So unless a roundabout way loophole that's doing this, they're basically just going to commit murder. So, yeah, I guess. So that's a thing. But yeah, after this, we cut back to Kurapika and Queen Oito, as we're talking about how the punishment for leaving the ship before the end of Section War is death, and that's what happened to Cacho after she left the ship. And now, seemingly, they're basically going to have to keep going until the Section War is over. But Kurapika says that while this is a powerful Nen that envelops the ship, is making things impossible for escape, it might not just be, it might be an actual hope for them instead. As he states that there's something that he needs permission in order to do for the protection of her, the other young princes, and Wobble. But before we get that, we cut back to Zhang Li, who is going over the coins from his Nen Beast. And here's the thing. This is definitely going to play some role in the future. It's Togashi, then coins are going to play some sort of effect. They're basically going over how these coins start off at 1, and then after 10 days, they became a value of 10. And so they're wondering, just marking down their value and when they were created and dropped by the Nen Beast, and to see what they could do with it in the future. But Zanglei's like, ugh, these guys are morons. They don't have the basic future sight or knowledge or experience or whatever to kind of come up with a good way to make this usable or to figure out what this Nen ability is. And so he wants to call room 1014, which is Kurapika's room, because he's like, I need to understand this Guardian Spirit Beast's ability and its effects. I need Kurapika to get through this. Mainly, everything is going with the Nen classes, and he also really wants Kurapika's help to figure this out because, again, he doesn't really know much about Nen whatsoever, so he's going to need Kurapika's help. But then we come back to the Justice Department with Kaiser and the guy who I believe is part of the Dark Content Research team. I think, from what I was told, I went and asked a friend. His name is Steiner, I believe. I hope I'm right on this one. Let me know if I'm wrong. But they're discussing what's going on with Hulkenberg and what happened as well. And I do like how that there was some sort of information that some of his followers passed out alongside him in the waiting room while that whole Netero thing happened. And apparently what he said was, the experience of my people viewing me as like some sort of mass hypnosis. Once they meet me and they end up getting alarmed, they can just pass out from joy after basking in his presence. So, talking like a true politician that has their own head up their own ass. Actually, now that I think about it, that's basically most politicians. I really hope that joke flies well. I'm not funny, aren't I? Anyway, they're going to think that that there is something that is relatively concerning. One of the staff that was there during visitation did pass out from the same symptoms that Hulkenberg did. And so Kaiser thinks that this isn't a coincidence, is that he should try and tell them their situation in order to find out what Hulkenberg is trying to do and form some sort of alliance. Because remember, they have a letter for Hulkenberg with a bunch of stuff like the truth of his birth and all the dirty stuff in the dirty closet for the rest of for some of the princes, mainly Benjamin and Tserriednich. So they want to get him on his side, especially considering that Hulkenberg has basically so far a good relationship with the younger princes and wants to protect them. Obviously, nobody knows that he's basically mentally deteriorating to becoming more brutal and more unhinged. But I still think he would want to protect the other princes. So, Kaiser and Steiner are discussing of essentially having him meet with this guy named Wario. I'm thinking Wario from Mario. To figure things out, find out about the inability of Hulkenberg, and forge some sort of alliance and figure out what exactly is going on. So we cut to the interrogation room where Kaiser is talking to Wario. So he's talking to Wario and he's like, look, rest assured, you won't be censored because of any of your beliefs or whatever, you can talk freely. We know there's been some mysterious abilities used in the Succession battle. 10th Prince Kasho used that to escape the ship, and that cost her life. So, it seems the ship is covered by a barrier and the king has something to do with it. He's coming clean about this information, mind you. And by doing this, he will essentially seemingly get more of Hulkenberg's trust, so that he could learn more about Hulkenberg's abilities and his goals and what's going on with him. Saying that they don't have time to waste on on some vague nonsense. These supernatural abilities are real, and the princes are using them as weapons. I support Hulkenberg, separate from my duties as a Justice Department Chief, Prosecutor, and as long as the 11th Prince Fugetsu safety can be assured as well. It's then when Wario lifts up his left hand, revealing the feather mark on him, signifying that he's a follower of Hulkenberg, but also a signifier of the Nen ability that will help with Hulkenberg's body-swamping Netero ability, saying that he received it from Prince Hulkenberg. And Hulkenberg said that if Kaiser ever brought up the topic of Nen abilities himself, that Wario would essentially comply. And so Hulkenberg anticipated this very situation, and so if this is brought up with like no real ulterior motive seemingly, or without it having to be dragged out by coincidence, that Wario should explain things to him, saying you would obviously connect the dots for the mass fainting, and if you don't come to see him, it's proof you're wary of him, and that means you know of the existence of Nen. So yeah, Hulkenberg, after learning all this and everything that's going on, he has grown a lot smarter and a lot more conniving around about with the cautious ways that he wants to do things. So I'm actually kind of glad about this, because Hulkenberg is definitely in a very precarious situation right now, as Wario states that Hulkenberg is going to die soon. Which is interesting to see, because in the next panel we see Benjamin talking to Balsamilko on the phone, telling him that the mission is complete. As we see that Balsamilko, with the vestige of Hulkenberg behind them, shows that it seems that Hulkenberg hit his mark on Balsamilko, and he personally swapped places with Balsamilko's soul. So now Hulkenberg is in the body of Balsamilko, and Balsamilko is seemingly like either suppressed or his soul is stuck in Hulkenberg's body, while Hulkenberg's body is like in the sickbay unconscious. surrounded by all of his followers, with Kaiser looking over him from the corner. So keep that in mind. He might put something together to figure out Hulkenberg's then ability, for all we know. But with Bolsonaro taking over, this might lead to the potential of Benjamin kicking the bucket next. Now, obviously, we'll probably have to see. Obviously, we'll have to see Benjamin like fight or do something. But the fact that either Bolsonaro doesn't have a Nen ability, which from all we know, if he doesn't have a Nen ability, then there's no way of Benjamin knowing that something's wrong. But since we saw Vic, the previous soldier that was hit by Hulkenberg's arrow previously and disappeared, and he didn't get a transfer his Nen to Benjamin, he was most likely still alive. Hulkenberg's arrow seemingly bypasses this, and they're probably still alive in some capacity. But either way, with all that aside, if Hulkenberg in Bolsonaro body gets close enough to Benjamin, he could actually use that virus that Bolsonaro had hidden in his boots to infect Benjamin. Now, obviously, Benjamin is definitely going to be relatively wary regardless, but if things go the way I believe, either Benjamin will die, Hulkenberg might fail and he will die, or it could potentially lead to a double knockout, essentially, a two-pronged killing of the two of them from the virus. The virus kills Benjamin, and then Benjamin, in retaliation, kills Hulkenberg within Bolsonaro's body. That could lead to two princes dying. Or Bolsonaro dies, Benjamin dies, and maybe Hulkenberg's body will go back, Hulkenberg's soul will go back to his body, because we still don't really know fully what happens if someone transferred to another body with Hulkenberg's arrow ends up dying in another body. So that possibility is still out there. And when that's done, the only real threats in the contest are Camilla and primarily Tserriednich. So yeah, two of the biggest heavy hitters right now are basically getting ready to go at each other without one of them truly knowing. So I'm curious to see how this goes out. But with all that said, we then cut to the end of the chapter, where Kurapika is discussing with Queen Oito of letting the letter that they received from Fugetsu with what Kacho wrote down, thanks to Kaiser, public. As he says, the second round of the Nen workshop begins tomorrow, and like last time, attendance will be up to the princes, and he will let them know that they'll be making the letter public. Now, but not Kurapika's letter, which is the one telling them about like the death of the princes and all that stuff, and some of the secrets. No, the one addressed to Queen Oito and Wobble, for three reasons. One, the letters to the higher princes expose their scandals and crimes. If they get nervous that the lower ranked princes hold their secrets, it might accelerate their conflict. So, yeah, the first reason is to avoid suspicion if they reveal the letter. Second, he's hoping that making the 10th Prince Kacho's wishes known would actually put a damper on the succession battles, to kind of lower the mood, or kind of like postpone things to an extent from other princes, since obviously this is from Prince Fugetsu's whole letter, and the truth will definitely like put a stifle on things. But three, by advertising the fact that they can expect some kind of contact from the higher ranked princes, they may come up empty-handed with other information. So depending on who comes knocking on their door and for what purposes, it could end up postponing or canceling the letter reveal as some sort of marketing chip. And the chapter ends with the Nen class starting up once more. So with this chapter over, things seem to be going in a very drastic direction. We can either get two princes taken out, or one of the other princes taken out due to circumstances like a virus, Benjamin figuring things out and taking out Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg might not even potentially die if he dies in Bolsonaro's body. We got the plan to take out Prince Lucerus is potentially going to happen soon. We got some more perspective on Benjamin and how really close he is to enacting martial law once more through his perspective on things that happened in the previous chapter, but also how careful he's trying to be, but at the same time teetering on that edge. Kaiser figuring out, or at least attempting to figure out what's going on with Hulkenberg, form some sort of alliance and figure out his Nen ability, and Kurapika trying to cause more of a stalemate through the letters that they received addressed to the Queen. Once more, relatively dense chapter to an extent, but not as dense as last week, but I did have a lot to talk about, so This was definitely longer than I anticipated, but either way, a lot happened in this chapter, and I am incredibly excited to see what will happen in the future of the story. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought of this chapter and what you thought of the events in it. And let me know if I missed anything or any potential for what could potentially happen in the future and the implications of what happened in this chapter for the future of the story. Let me know everything in the comment section down below, and if you like this setup for the videos, if you like it like this, I might do more videos like this in the future with this going on in the background. So let me know in the comment section down below. And once more, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day. Chapter 404 of HunterxHunter is out, and this was another really good chapter. We got a bit more elaboration seemingly on the third prince's Nen Beast abilities. More political stuff is happening with all these different factions, all being held together strong, but anything can break. We got seemingly our first real death of a prince in a long time, and I'm just going to say this, we're probably going to get the Phantom Troop back soon, so that's something I'm also excited about. And we also have some pages where surprisingly there isn't that much dialogue, if not any at all, so we'll get to that. But before we jump into this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here and gives me motivated to keep doing more. Also, if you guys want, please check out my manga podcast, Shonen Pulse, over on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, link in the description down below, where me, Papa Trophy, Yatogami, and Nox all end up talking about a bunch of different manga from a multitude of different magazines. We have already broken over 500 subscribers in the last month and a half, so we're very close to 1K. If we can get there by the end of the year, that'd be very much appreciated. It's a lot of fun, and I think you guys would very much enjoy it. But with that out of the way, let's get right into chapter 404 of HunterxHunter, titled Speculation. And this starts off more or less from last week, where Kurapika is actually brought over to the third Prince Zhang-Lei's room to discuss everything going on with the change of the coins and their value. And a lot of math and stuff goes on, but based off of it changing both the number as well as the appearance, seemingly between Kurapika and Zhang-Lei, Kurapika basically think of it as more of a coercive type Nen ability, and also potentially showcases that as a way to basically prove loyalty to Zhang-Lei. Since it's basically money that increases in value every couple of days, that means that they might end up having some sort of additional effects and bonuses the longer it is out in circulation for each coin, and thus potentially adding more of a benefit to whatever and whoever has these coins. And so Kurapika essentially ends up coming up with a hypothesis, and also is basically trying to more or less not only come up with stuff going on with the coins and give enough information to Zhang-Lei to not only build up trust and help secure Wobble's actual, safety, but also leaving out enough information of the idea of it being somewhat of a coercive type Nen ability. That way to kind of withhold some information to keep Zhang-Lei from having too much power over the relationship in terms of their deal. Now, one thing about the Nen coins that Kurapika is surmising is that it will build up Nen over the course of multiple days, and thus the number will change and increase to 10 every 10 days. And so he surmises that by the 6-month period, it'll be like 1060 somethings, 1064ths of its required amount, and thus anybody who has the coin could potentially just bypass all things involving awakening Nen, all the training, just awaken to Nen fully with little to no effort just by having this coin. And so it'll seemingly build up over time, and thus it'll also end up building more Nen users seemingly based off of that. And so since this Nen ability is seemingly based off of planning stuff for the future and for the long run, it bases a lot on Zhang-Lei's personality on wanting to essentially plan ahead for when he becomes the next leader king of Kakin. So having this coin be cumulatively enhancing abilities for the long run does seem to be pretty up his personality. But here's the thing, Kurapika actually omits the part of it being a coercive type Nen ability. Because in this case, it is not necessary to do this so that it could have a bit of power over it. But also, its effects on people are kind of unknown, so it is not sure if it'll just be like a little, hey, nudge nudge. If you're loyal to Zhang-Lei, you'll get more or less power, the total will increase. Maybe it'll like slowly coerce people onto Zhang-Lei's side over time, and it could also be to maybe help see if this person is loyal to Zhang-Lei, maybe that'll help increase the value or just a change in the coin in and of itself, because it did change between Zhang Lei and Kurapika once they exchanged in terms of the face and the back. So it's interesting to see. But Kurapika brings up basically what the effects of the very first person who picked it up on the first day. And so he instantly picks it up that it is Kaventoba, one of the first Prince's personal guard. Because if we all remember, and this is actually something I had to be reminded of a little while ago, is that he was the first one to pick up the very first coin produced by Zhang Lei's Nen Beast. And so that is also a value of 10, as another coin is a value of 10. And since there's a coin produced every day, seemingly, one is definitely unaccounted for, as the first day, seemingly, there was nothing, and we're already 11 days into the start of the Succession contest. And so Kurapika is trying to figure out what this ability is, and if it'll change based off of someone who is not loyal to Zhang Lei. But this also gives Kurapika the out of, withholding information, since it's one of Benjamin's men. And so if it's found out that he has his coercive type information about Zhang Lei's Nen ability, the fact that one of Benjamin's guards is right there and seemingly holding onto the coin, Kurapika's suspicions will definitely be valid, and he won't be penalized by the third prince over this aspect. So it's pretty good moves by Kurapika there. This discussion ends up ending off with Kurapika holding onto one of the coins from Zhang Lei, and Zhang Lei holding onto one himself, and so they'll discuss how the value changes and all that. And just like I said, this could be a way for Zhang Lei to potentially see if Kurapika is relatively holding on to his promises and stuff like that, and to keep, loyalty to Zhang Lei. So that's pretty interesting to think about, and Zhang Lei is also trying to play Kurapika, as much information out of Kurapika as he possibly can. And Kurapika states that they're off the way for the second day of the workshop to figure out the other topic that Zhang Lei wants to discuss. And that there can never be too much information. But here's the interesting part. Kurapika actually thinks about the delicate balance of all the princes, as well as the fact that Zhang Lei is one of the benefactors of one of the three mafia families. And so, with all that within mind, there's a delicate balance. And so if something happens where there is a conflict between the mafia families, it could potentially lead to the death of a prince, or it could break the stability that has been pretty neatly maintained between all the different families from Tserriednich, Lucerus, and Zhang Lei. This is going to be very interesting, because with how strong this balance is, all it takes is something minimal to seemingly break it, primarily with the mafia family. And even speculates that if the mafia go to war on this ship, it gives Benjamin the added benefit of this whole inevitable chaos, because he is so close to enacting martial law, as we've seen for the last two chapters, that all it takes is for one little thing. If the mafia actually start to noticeably just go after each other, killing each other, and potentially lead to the death of a prince, it'll leave Benjamin with no other obstacles to enact martial law, and so he'll benefit from it. He'll put all of the princes under house arrest for their safety and supervision, and at the end of the day, could potentially end up just succeeding in the throne without having to spill any more unnecessary blood. So Benjamin, if all this goes as is, Benjamin will reap the benefits of it. Obviously, we all know that the mafia families are literally going at it right now at the lower tiers of the Black Whale. So Kurapika's rescue scenario is currently happening as we speak, as he's thinking about this. He's also bringing up the idea of the person with the snake attacks in his Nen classes is still out on the loose. But with everything going on right now with Zhang Lei and everything that is going on with the mafia families, Benjamin, and the Succession contest, they're on thin ice, and it more or less is a gamble for what he's starting to do, and a delicate balance for everything that's going on within the Succession contest. We then transition over to Cheadle, one of the Zodiacs, who is taking Prince Hulkenberg's body, who was previously vomited and seemed literally dying, to go through an operation. As we all realized in the last chapter, seemingly after Hulkenberg swapped bodies with Balsamilko, we essentially got it confirmed that the virus is in Hulkenberg's body now and is killing him. Also, really quick, all the way in the back of this panel, I didn't notice it at first, but it's Leorio. Leorio's back in the series after a long time ago. I think the last time we saw him was 6 or 7 years ago, during the previous batch of chapters before the previous hiatus. So it's been a long time since we've seen Leorio, but no speaking lines, but he's on the operating table, so that's pretty interesting to see. We then see Hulkenberg just discussing everything going on with his Nen ability, Hulkenberg, and everything that's going on. So this whole chapter gives us a whole big details on Hulkenberg's Nen ability, which is just incredibly wordy, so I'll try and simplify it as much as I possibly can as we go through it. But one thing is that the targeted persona, the person whose body is being taken over, that main persona, is asleep while it's being possessed by somebody that is shot through with Hulkenberg's arrow. He's also seemingly trying to convince his mother to like make his death like neglected to be an autopsy, so not to find anything else about the virus and everything, to help make his death stick a bit more and all that. Hulkenberg ends up going to Benjamin over the phone, saying that the mission is complete and that they'll know within the next 12 hours once Hulkenberg is officially done. And so, yeah, Hulkenberg is told by Benjamin in Balsamilko's body to watch over things. And so we end up getting this whole big breakdown over Hulkenberg's ability. So I'm gonna try and cliff notes it, because this is a hell of a lot of information for me to read through. So give me a second as I basically give you guys the quick rundown on it. Okay, so with the previous swap that had occurred a little while ago, it's confirmed that once someone is shot with the arrow, the mind who was shot has priority over the body, and the previous consciousness is essentially in a force of sleep until the body ends up going to sleep. And the way this ability is like we stated, forced mind swap. When one person is chosen, one person out of the group that charges Hulkenberg's arrow essentially gets randomly selected as part of the arrow to be swapped into somebody's body. And so, yeah, that makes things pretty interesting. It's like a whole roulette. This includes Hulkenberg himself, which is actually a pretty big risk-reward thing. And as it tends to work, the bigger the risk, the higher the reward. Which means that there was like a 1 in, I think, 13 chance of Hulkenberg essentially being swapped into Balsamilko's body out of all of his followers in that instance. But he did say that he planned for this. And even then, he was always like, we need to find out what happens when the body dies, when someone else's mind is within it. And so with how it works is that one persona can be awake at a time. And once, like, let's say Hulkenberg's body, for example, if that dies, his mind will be, like, put to sleep in Balsamilko's, and Balsamilko's persona will reawaken and take control. And after that, essentially, it'll be more like two personas in one singular body. But to figure things out a bit more on the return to the original body, even after its death, Hulkenberg is going to essentially take a drug to put him to sleep within 10 hours so that they could potentially, in a way, find out what happens before his death, because if his mind is asleep before his original body dies, perhaps his persona will still live on within Balsamilko, and maybe Hulkenberg can potentially either put his mind back into his body and revive it, that's my whole theory, or he'll either stay in Balsamilko's body, find a way to make it permanent, or swap into another follower's body and see how that works out. Because there's also the idea that the succession battle might include body and soul being dead. So if Hulkenberg's body is dead, but his soul still remains, then he's still technically in the succession contest. And that could also mean that his guardian spirit beast is still around. Now, there's also another thing that is brought upon with his Netero, and that is, it's only for those who are willing to sacrifice their lives wholeheartedly with no conflict whatsoever. Like, if they're feeling conflicted, like, let's say I'm, like, second-guessing everything that's going on right now. I will not be chosen for Hulkenberg's arrow to take control of someone's body. Since I'm not putting my life on the line, then that ability won't register me, and thus I won't be one of the people that could potentially be used to take over someone's body. And so this is only for people who are truly into the ideal nation that Hulkenberg wants to build. Honor and noble sacrifice. And so, yeah, this is why Hulkenberg was also chosen, but this is why all these other characters are chosen. With the high risk, high reward, this is definitely something that is incredibly big for Hulkenberg to do. Though I do have to commend Hulkenberg, he did plan for the possibility of his soul being swapped, since this was random, because it was like a 1 in 13th chance, but he did plan for this. So I have to commend his multiple chess movements to actually do this. It's actually very interesting to see, and shows the amount of IQ that Hulkenberg has now that he's fully utilizing and learning about his Nen ability. But yeah, we get the whole breakdown over 10 hours roughly for control over Bolsonaro body before he takes a sleeping pill, and to see how things can work with the minds coexisting within the same body. And so if everything goes as Hulkenberg plans, he might be able to emerge as the victor of the Succession contest. And if he's in Bolsonaro's body, and his original body is dead, he'll get close to Benjamin and potentially take out Benjamin one-on-one. So that'd be pretty interesting. But we then transition to a rarity in Hunter x Hunter where we see multiple panels and instances with no dialogue, showcasing doctors, military men, going into the room of Hulkenberg as we see Hulkenberg's body in the operating room. We then cut to Benjamin, Camilla, and Zhang Lei doing what they're doing in their own rooms as Hulkenberg's body is fighting for its life. We then cut to Tserriednich as he continues to break nanorecord after nanorecord. And even he's frustrated with how things are going, but even gives himself a deadline of like maybe 2 weeks, maybe he'll get everything down, but he's craving the challenge, he's craving the power that he'll get. And his bodyguard is kind of like, goddamn, he's making so much progress, much more than the average guy can do, and he's so intense about it, giving himself a deadline that seems on another level, but he knows he can do it. And that's what makes him even scarier. And I pray for this bodyguard, the guy, because apparently Tserriednich wants to spar with him afterwards. If Tserriednich doesn't hold back whatsoever, this bodyguard, he's gonna die, straight out. He's going to get himself killed, unless it's done in parallel future, in which case he won't die. It's a whole thing, but that's pretty interesting. But we then cut to more pages and panels of no dialogue whatsoever. One is of Tserriednich just holding out and trying to focus his aura. And man, does he look incredibly ominous with this look. Tserriednich, if he's the final boss, he probably is the final boss of this arc. The build-up for this guy is insane. We get him, some panels with the Beppa, Tyson, we then see Luzerus in his room. We see the men spirit beasts of Kacho looking over the sickly Fugetsu in the sickbay. We see Bisky with her prince and that prince's bodyguards. I forgot that prince's name. Just great to see Bisky again. We then see more of Kurapika and Queen Oito and Prince Wobble as he meets up with Benjamin's other guards, discussing the second round of classes that will begin the next day on Thursday at 9 in the morning. And so it'll be the same format as before, but this time Camilla's guards are going to be entering this time. And the previous two guards from Benjamin's camp are still going to be there. And so this is definitely something to be interested about, because Camilla essentially didn't have regard to 10. She wasn't interested in it, especially considering the fact that her guards and even the have-nots are Nen users. So they didn't really need to go to this class, and she found no interest in it. But with how things are going right now, it might be to verify information, to see if there's dirt on her that Kurapika might know, especially with all the rounds of letters that have happened previously with the last chapter. So it's very strong possibility that Camilla is going to try and find information, see if there's anything Kurapika knows about her, any dirt is brought to their attention, and perhaps to try and take out Kurapika and Prince Wobble in an assassination attempt, or what have you. And one of Benjamin's guards essentially brings up this motive as the whatnots are specialized in curse users, which means the person that is sent, the bodyguard that's sent, could be the curse user for Wobble. So that's a whole big thing, and so this could definitely invite full-on just death to Wobble right now. Probably the most danger that Wobble will probably be in is if Camilla's have-nots, the one that curses Wobble, will be there. So that's definitely a whole thing. And even Benjamin's men are just there are way too many uncertainties. Oh man, a lot's going on right now. Now, Kurapika says something interesting, because they're probably there because of the letters that they got, like I said, with the information, but Melody's letter didn't have any information on Camilla, meaning that seemingly the judiciary branch did not have information on Camilla yet, or there was nothing for them to dig up on her, and she did a better job of covering her tracks than the rest of the princes, for all we freaking know. Either way, she's so nervous that she's sending bodyguards, so that's a whole lot of stuff to keep into account. And Kurapika has Zhang Lei and the contract right there, so he needs to work very carefully. We then get to see more panels of doctors working on Hulkenberg's body, as then the body flatlines, and man, this one panel of the deceased Hulkenberg of his body with blood spat up, it's just viscerally horrific. Now, obviously, no persona, no spirit is technically in that body, so no one really suffered. It was just the body's natural functions going at the curse. But yeah, Hulkenberg's body is officially declared dead. And so Hulkenberg and Balsamilko's body is talking to Benjamin over the death. And so Benjamin essentially does something something interesting that humanizes him. He essentially gives the Hulkenberg's bodyguards and followers proceedings over the funeral, access to it, as well as to do whatever they want to their body and say Hulkenberg's last words, even though he didn't speak them full-heartedly. So that is interesting. That's a big degree of respect that Benjamin is doing, because he told Balsamilko in Hulkenberg's body that with the funeral, with the handling of Hulkenberg's body and everything, to make sure that everything is handled respectfully. And Hulkenberg mentally thanks Benjamin for this, showcasing that despite the bloodbath, despite Benjamin going after his own siblings because of the succession contest, he does have a degree of just care and love for his siblings. Because if he didn't have any care or love for his siblings, even the smallest amount, he wouldn't want Hulkenberg's funeral, well, the death of Hulkenberg as far as he knows, to not be handled with as much respect and freedom with his followers as possible. So that humanizes him. So even though he's doing a whole bunch of, crazy stuff, wanting to enact martial law and all that, the fact that he cares so much for his brother after death to make this whole thing respectful as possible and to honor his brother, despite the fact that he basically was the one that put out a hit on his brother, shows a bit of humanization for Benjamin. So that's pretty interesting to see. And in the final page of the chapter, we get the announcement of Hulkenberg's tragic death and the announcement of when his funeral is going to be at the staircase at Tier 1. But it's then that we cut to the Phantom Troop, the group with Nobunaga, Finks, and Phaeton, as they're hearing all this, wondering, wait, is this Prince Hulkenberg one of the benefactors of the Mafia? They're like, nah, so I don't got to worry about them. And they go over the transmitter that they placed in the Haley's hideout, and so it'll make things easier to find them. And so we essentially cut back to where the Phantom Troop section of the story from the previous batch of chapters ended off. This is something that I had to go back and check, because this is where we ended things off with the previous batch of chapters with Nobunaga's group. Because this announcement was happening towards the end of this section. Then we transitioned to Melody and what was going on with her, and then leading into Kurapika, which led into this batch of chapters. So we're finally full circle. And the fact that everything going on with the Haley, with the Mafia War, with Hisoka, with the Phantom Troop, happened seemingly around the exact same time all this stuff in the previous batch of chapters has been going on, is wild. And also, Kurapika's worst case scenarios are happening in real time right now. So it's only a matter of time before this delicate balance is fully shattered once it starts to affect the princes and everyone on the higher tiers. So, yeah. But yeah, with all that said and done, we essentially get back to Nobunaga's group, and it seems like we might transition back to the Phantom Troop for this next couple of chapters. And I am so happy that we're back with the Phantom Troop. Look, I love everything that's going on with the princes. I love everything that is going on with Kurapika, the dealings, the trust, everything that's going on with all the maneuvering and chess plays. But I'd be lying if I didn't say the stuff with Hisoka and the Phantom Troop wasn't the favorite stuff I've had in this whole arc thus far. And while these batch of chapters have been great for information building and bringing everything back together, the Phantom Troop stuff is the part that I love the most. It's probably recency bias with everything that happened with the previous batch of chapters and the backstory to the Phantom Troop, and you want to see them even more. But either way, there's like a 90% chance that we're going back to the Phantom Troop with this transitionary sequence right now, tying us back to the previous batch of chapters, showcasing that everything that happened has been on the same timeline with that last batch of chapters and this last batch of chapters, seemingly. So, yeah. Either way, I'm excited to see what happens next, and I'm curious to see if we are going to shift over to the Phantom Troop, or just another group in this entire multifaceted arc with the Succession War. But what do you guys think of this chapter? How do you feel about everything going on with Hulkenberg's death? Do you think that now that his body's dead, once everything goes on with Balsamilko, and once his consciousness leaves that body, will he somehow find a way to subvert it and stay on Balsamilko's body, or resurrect himself in his old body right afterwards? So that we're essentially reviving it with post-mortem Nen. That's something I didn't mention earlier. If it's post-mortem Nen, he could maybe restart his heart like Hisoka did after he died against Chrollo at Heaven's Arena. So there's that. There's everything going on with the coins, everything that's going on with delicate balance that's going on right now with the Mafia and the princes and everything. It's something I didn't really mention because I completely forgot to say this, but the catalyst will not just be the mafia families going to war, but also the death of a prince. And let's not forget, Melody, the Kachos, Nen Spirit Beast, and Kaiser are all planning the assassination of 7th Prince Luzerus, who just so happens to be one of the Mafia benefactors. So if they succeed in their assassination attempt to get rid of Luzerus, oh, the Mafia families, once that is brought to light with the Mafia families, Benjamin's going to enact martial law, and then everything's going to go out the window. So, yeah, a lot is going on with these batch of chapters, and things just so close to hitting the fan and deploying into all-out chaos. So, yeah. Either way, these last batch of chapters have been great, and I'm excited to see what happens next. But let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below with your thoughts, theories, and speculations. And once more, if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day. Chapter 405 of Hunter x Hunter is officially out, and I'm not gonna lie, this is a really good chapter. I know I say this practically every single week, but the guy's just been nailing it out of the park ever since he came back from his hiatus with some really great chapters with awesome plot developments, and having things click together while also making things a bit more complex for the wider narrative of this entire arc. But this chapter not only gave us a couple more answers and reveals, but also set stuff up for some worst case scenarios for the future, and I'm incredibly excited for it. But before we really jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. So, let's just start off with one of the immediate revelations at the start of this chapter, and that is us getting the reveal of the actual true blue Hisoka, who is essentially on tier 1, seemingly pawning himself off as a card dealer at a table in the casino. And let's just say this appearance of Hisoka, I originally thought this was the same Hisoka we saw back in the last batch of chapters in like 392, I believe. But no, after some inner monologue and later on confirmation, this is Hisoka. This is the actual first appearance of Hisoka. And it's revealed that the Hisoka that we saw in the last batch of chapters 2 years ago was actually Banalanov. You know, member of the Phantom Troop who's wrapped in the mummy bandages and the boxing gloves. Apparently, his ability is to transform into people that he has met and spent time with. And so, the whole thing with Hisoka in the last batch of chapters, it was actually Banalanov helping with a grander plan from chrollo. Now, before I get into that, let's think of the more in-depth analysis of Hisoka's mentality, and also answer some questions as well as to what we would think would happen if, like, Hisoka encountered the Chimera Ants. So Hisoka's essentially going through an inner monologue, stating why he didn't want to take part in the ant extermination, everything going on with the Chimera Ants. It's because they weren't people, they were ants, so he didn't really feel any real, quote-unquote, attraction to them. And when he felt that rumbling earlier, which is from Hulkenberg's Zen ability, he didn't really find any interest in it because it was a group ability. It wasn't based off of somebody else. It was based on an M-Beast, helping create the power and all that. And with how Hisoka goes with, he prefers to basically fight people one-on-one. He thinks he is, quote-unquote, normal. And I guess for Hisoka standards, yes. And so that's why he prefers to have one-on-one fights with people that he deems worth the time. And their time is worth being with him. It kind of helps give us a bit more for Hisoka's mentality. Also kind of confirms something that we all really kind of knew from the get-go, that Hisoka essentially equates fighting to, well, being intimate with somebody. So he is a psychopath after all, so it makes sense. But it's after this little bit of inner monologue that we see someone following Hisoka. And it's Hisoka. And like I stated, this is Banalanov, as he didn't expect to find Hisoka in tier 1 in the VIP casino. And so, apparently chrollo had Banalanov transform into Hisoka, and then set up that whole thing with Henry and the Haley family, so that he can be sent to tier 1 to keep an eye on things and to look out for Hisoka, because he is on the ship. And if he finds Hisoka, he will let chrollo know and help bring the ants together, all the spiders together, to essentially take out Hisoka once and for all. Now, obviously, we end up jumping back in time a bit, as we see that back when we got that reveal of Hisoka, we never got the full-on confirmation. It was from the girl that when she punches someone, literally their inner thoughts are spoken to her, and she can tell if they're telling the truth or not. And so Banalnov transformed into that blood guy, and so he had to kill the girl to keep his secret that he's a fake hisoka from blurting out to the rest of the mafia families. Obviously, with this person being killed by Banalnov, there's always the possibility that they'll find out the troop killed her, but they just pawn off to Hisoka, or perhaps even the Haley family, since they're going on a killing spree. So bases are kind of covered, even with that bit of a risk. But I like more of this confirmation about the treasure that Chrollo really wants on the Black Whale 1. And that is that he wants to find a Nen ability, and that there's a Nen user that he wants to steal an ability from, that has an ability that can kill Hisoka once and for all. But I like how it goes into how everybody wants to sell things with Hisoka once and for all, but not letting Chrollo do so. They want to do it without Chrollo kind of doing anything too out of hand, because Chrollo wants to take this upon himself and deal with Hisoka himself. But the way how the Phantom Troop works, they just want to take Chrollo out for revenge. They want to do this instead of Chrollo, kind of leave him out of it. But still, it's interesting that the fact that we knew that when the Phantom Troop came onto the Black Whale, they wanted to rob the place as one big heist. We didn't expect that one of the parts of the heist that Chrollo was primarily looking for was a Nen ability to help him kill Hisoka once for all so that he wouldn't be brought back. We also get some confirmation from Banalnov why Chrollo kept the number 9 spot empty the entire time ever since Hisoka betrayed them and left. That he wants Hisoka to essentially be the last person to have that spot in the Phantom Troop and kind of close the curtain on that whole thing from Hisoka's whole big performance and betrayal. So that is interesting. Chrollo essentially doesn't want to leave any real risks, but also wants to kind of turn away from the whole thing that happened with Hisoka, so that is fairly interesting. But yeah, once Banalnov found Hisoka, he didn't expect to find them right away. He transformed into somebody else. This is why I like having some friends that read HunterxHunter also. And apparently, I did not recognize this person that Banalnov transformed into, but it was actually one of the Shadow Beasts that they took capture and had that like carpet ability for stealing stuff. So yeah, that is really cool callback to York New City. What actually makes Banalnov's ability a bit more messed up is that the time he spends as somebody else in that transformation state depends on how long he's known the person face to face. So depending on how long he can stay in that transformation, confirms how long they kind of kept that guy kind of, chained up until he was dead, potentially. And also, has Banalnov done this to a lot of other people to stock up on potential transformations to keep these disguises going? That's a big thing, so yeah. But anyway, we actually get to see Chrollo 100% for the first time ever. We get the page dedicated to himself as he's walking through the Black Whale with a news report in the background giving an announcement over someone that died a decade ago by a brutal murder. And he's like a chairman of a charity foundation dedicated to helping children, and no one has any clues on who his murderer is. And now, based off of the context from how this was and how Chrollo was shown after this panel showcasing this guy's face, I had to take a double take and go back to the last battle chapters because I knew I saw this guy before. And my suspicions were correct. This guy is definitely 100% Tsarasa's killer. We all know from the Phantom Troop backstory that Tsarasa, one of the OG members of the troop back when they were just like a literal theater troupe, was brutally murdered in a forest by herself by people, and her remains were left in a bag for people to find. So this confirms that at least a decade ago, the Phantom Troop found this guy who was Tsarasa's killer and enacted sweet, brutal revenge on him. And let's be honest, chances are what the Phantom Troop did to him probably wasn't cruel enough based on what they did to Tsarasa. And also the darker implications of the fact that this guy had a charity organization for children to help them. The darker implications of that is potentially not all the children were being helped, and let's just leave it at that. Let our imaginations go with that. I don't want to think about it. But after this pretty big confirmation, to an extent, of Tsarasa's killer essentially being already dealt with a long time ago, we cut back to Nobunaga's group as they're talking back to the Cha'ar family and their whole deal. As they're trying to figure out what's going on with the Haley, and what their goals and reasons are. As Nobunaga does bring up something that's interesting as they're taking off the balance from the Mafia families and going against everything, asking if it's really Hailey on this ship. And so after going over the fact that, well, the previous boss was taken out, and thus Morena ended up coming to the fold as the boss now, due to the whole not being proper royal descent, illegitimate child of King Nasabi and all that, she took the quote-unquote throne and chair of the Hailey family and is now in charge. So they don't know her personally, but they know that she is part of the Hailey family and is the person running things. But I like how Nobunaga essentially comes to a big conclusion after wondering what's their goal and what are they aiming for? What exactly are they trying to do? Because when it comes to wanting to take out the Mafia families and all that, it doesn't really make too much sense based on all of the things that the Hailey are doing, especially the fact that they're killing civilians. Especially with the fact that civilians are essentially their customers, as the vice boss of the Char family is talking about. So why would they kill all of these civilians? The underboss, whose name I can't remember, goddamn, so many names to remember. I'm sorry, guys. Let me know who his name is. I feel like it's fairly obvious. But he ends up asking maybe the reasoning for all this is something else. And Nobunaga states that Hailey is trying to destroy everything. Not just the princes, not just the Mafia bosses, but civilians in general, everything on this ship, Kakin as a whole. And so, with how things were in that sealed chamber, he talks about how the sealed chamber on the cruise ship presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and that there could be multiple motivations. And that the power needed to destroy everything, they get their power from killing. And so they're using literal human sacrifices in order to gain the power from Net. And so Nobunaga basically full-on deduces Morena's whole motivation right off the bat. Because he put the Phantom Troop themselves, with their mentality of basically kind of being a part of a group, but also kind of doing whatever the heck they want with their own motivations. He put himself in that whole mentality, and he came up literally with everything that Morena is doing right now. Not only with the fact that she wants to destroy everything due to how things have been going, but also the fact that literally all the members of the Hailey have just been kind of doing their own thing, as shown by every Hailey member they've encountered thus far. That is very big deductions by Nobunaga. Not only that, but also coming in with confirmation that they are basically getting stronger based off killing people, which is why they're killing so many people in so many different ways. So, yeah, man, Nobunaga, you gotta become a detective or something like that, like a criminal investigator, because, oh man, you literally figured everything out right off the bat. But as the Char vice boss ends up saying that them and the Shiyu family are gonna fully cooperate, they ask the Phantom Troop once more to crush the Hailey. And so they end up going off with the vice boss. And as they're going through this sealed hallway, we end up getting the underboss's inner monologues. As when Nobunaga says to kind of get the rest of the Phantom Troop together so that they could end up essentially figuring all this out and go to finally take out the Hailey family, we get the inner monologue of the underboss. As he literally says, Morena, we've got a problem. These guys might find you far sooner than we expected. It accelerates the schedule, but we might have to use our Joker. So this confirms that the underboss of the Char family is in league with Morena, is a mole for Morena, and essentially is trying to feed information that they know to her. So we have betrayals already. And I'm so happy for this, because this adds another layer to this, because this guy will probably do something to throw a wrench in things. And I cannot wait to see how this happens. But here's the thing. We end up cutting to Morena as she is with Dogman, who is an enhancer and a level 72 in the Contagion game. And so they are going to use him to go to Hulkenberg's funeral procession. And there's going to be a lot of people there, and they're probably going to send more Hailey members. And this is a big worst case scenario, because that literally gives every member of the Hailey family basically free reign to level up in this instance and get stronger based off of mass murder. So, that is crazy. Also, Dogman, he's level 62. He's almost to the stage where he could end up doing his own contagion game and bring more people into it. But what is interesting is that Morena, while also the possibility of them killing a bunch of people in that whole funeral procession to level up, their main goal is to find somebody in the crowd. As, thanks to his leveling up, Dogman can now essentially sniff out somebody's Nen type, and whether they've learned Nen within 2 meters. So the closer he gets to somebody, not only can he find out if they know Nen, but he can also know their Nen type or Nen affinity. And that ends up adding more to strategy, because if you know someone's affinity and once you see their actual full-on Nen abilities, you can come up with a much more concrete strategy to take them out and deal with them. So this is already an incredibly powerful ability, gives him a big advantage in any fight he gets into, especially if it's close quarters. So that is incredibly useful in any scenario involving Nen users. So with this whole thing with Dogman, he's going off to the funeral procession to find whoever they're looking for. And he's got somebody who has like a capture ability who can essentially have guaranteed capture if the person doesn't know Nen. So if whoever they're finding, if they know Nen, it'll be harder for this ability to essentially capture him. But if he doesn't know Nen, it'll be a lot easier. So this all comes down to who this person that they're looking for is. They don't say specifically. Honestly, it'd be pretty big if the person that Morena is looking for in this crowd is also the same person that chrollo was looking for the specific Nen ability to take on Hisoka and kill him once and for all. But yeah, that is very big. I hope that funeral procession is going to be a freaking bloodbath soon, and things are being set up. But you want to know what's also incredibly foreboding? Morena essentially sent some other guys that got taken out by the Phantom Troop, or at least got won out by the Phantom Troop and other people, off to level up to a special room where it seemingly they did a mass slaughter of people to level up to the level 50s. And so they're just oozing with aura. And these guys are definitely going to be a big problem. Now, let me know in the comments, because I do not remember these guys. I'm going to have to go back and double check and read it soon. But let me know if we've seen their Nen abilities before. And let me know in the comments and what their Nen types are. But either way, they've leveled up a lot. They're definitely oozing with power. And if these guys go off with the funeral processions with Dogman, or at least encounter Phantom Troop in this instance, it's going to be a rough fight. And the chapter ends with Nobunaga, Phaeton, and Finks going to the end of the hallway to a door, and it being opened. And they are incredibly shocked with what they are seeing. And that ends the chapter. So, what did we learn with this chapter? Well, for one, the Hisoka we thought we meant was not Hisoka, but now we 100% know where Hisoka is, and he is stuck with Banalanov in this instance. So, let's be honest. With how things are right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Banalanov is the next member of the troop that gets taken out by Hisoka. Because if Hisoka, based on his experience, will most likely find Banalanov at some way, shape, or form, and if Banalanov is by himself, Hisoka will probably just off him in some big way, because he wants to take out the entirety of the Phantom Troop. So, Banalanov is in probably one of the most dangerous situations for all the troop members, and I worry for the guy's safety. But we probably won't have to worry about him for a little bit, so he might be good for now. We got confirmation on who Sarasa's killer is, and that the Phantom Troop did get their revenge. We learned that Chrollo is after somebody with an ability that could take out Hisoka once for all, so he won't come back. Potentially, if Hisoka tried to do another post-mortem Nen thing and became stronger, for all we know. So that's definitely going to be interesting. And I wonder what this new Nen ability could be, and who this specific person is. Now that is the big mystery that we're building up to. Same with Morena finding a specific person at the funeral of Hulkenberg. So that is also an incredibly big plot thread that we have to see wrapped up. I personally would love to see if who Morena was looking for and who Chrollo was looking for are the same person, leading to a big conflict with the Haley family, with the rest of the Phantom Troop. And the reveal that the underboss of the Char family is in league with Morena is a big bombshell in and of itself. So I'm excited to see how that's going to play into things. And I wonder if they will end up getting the rest of the Phantom Troop to come back together, minus Banalanov, so that they can deal with the Haley family. Because based on how things are, with not only just those 3 members we saw at the end of this chapter, losing with Aura and have gotten stronger, they have essentially free level farming at that funeral procession with so many people. If Morena takes advantage of that, sends everybody in the Haley family to go and just take out so many people in that instance, it's going to be a bloodbath. And her people are going to level up. She might end up causing multiple contagions with her Nen ability, and then the killing game will just keep going on and on and on until everything's said and done, and potentially finish things off with the Succession War and maybe kind of screw everything up, potentially. That is incredibly likely. But I see a big conflict with the Phantom Troop much sooner than expected against the Haley family. But it'd be really cool if Hisoka just barges in and tries to take on some one-on-one fights for some people. I would love it if it would be pretty interesting if Morena was looking for Hisoka. I highly doubt it. But yeah, that would be pretty interesting as well. I do want to know one thing that we all kind of have to think about. How did Hisoka get on the Black Whale? Honestly, my guess is that he either just applied for a job, figured some stuff was going down here on the ship, and he just applied, or he applied for a bodyguard position, or he knows one of the princes. It's a big thing of who or what Hisoka's connected to for how we got onto the ship. But we'll have to wait and see on that aspect. And with how this chapter ended off, I'm curious to see what Nobunaga's group has found at the end of that hallway. But yeah, pretty big chapter. Hisoka reveal, plot threads revisited and tied up, and big bombshells for the rest of this chapter, and big implications for how fucked up the future of this arc is going to be with how Morena is going to deal with things, and with the literal traitor in the midst. So, I'm excited. Togashi, you just keep on giving us great chapter after great chapter, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think of this chapter? How do you feel about everything that was revealed here? And what do you think about all this information that we got? And how do you think things are going to pan together with the conflict with the Haley and the Phantom Troop and the rest of the Mafia families? Your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Look, I'm just going to say one thing and one thing only. I want to see Hisoka fight Dogman. Legitimately. I feel like that would be a fun fight to see. I just want to see Hisoka fight. That's all I want. And I feel like Dogman would be the perfect opponent. You know, I continuously get proven wrong with how good HunterxHunter has been getting with these last batch of chapters. And 406, oh boy, things are actually going to go to a pretty chaotic place, probably a lot quicker than I initially thought. The way Togashi is making this portion of the story, now that we're back with the Phantom Troop after the reveal that now we know where the real Hisoka is and who the fake Hisoka was, and now we're doing the Mafia stuff again, and how that's going to play into the larger plot, it really feels like we're going into one big all-out war with the Mafia families, and it might bleed into Tier 1 with the Succession War for all we know. So, yeah, everything that's going on in this chapter is just incredibly awesome to really just dive into. Chrollo's seemingly falling apart at the seams and trying to keep himself together. We got a bit more information on the treasure that he's looking for. We're also figuring out how he's looking for this person with the Nen ability that can kill Hisoka once and for all. And we get some more stuff going on with the Haley family and the Charhar family and the Shiyu. So, yeah. Shit's about to hit the fan, and at the end of the day, banal enough fucked up. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. I'm really appreciating how great these reviews have been doing lately, and I'm going to keep time on HunterxHunter as much as I possibly can. So, look forward to more reviews. It's just been a hell of a lot of fun talking about this, and also everything that you guys have been telling me in the comment section has been honestly really great. Also, just want to mention this, someone mentioned this in the comments of the previous review. The number 9 slot for the Phantom Troop was kept open because that was actually, because the 9th slot in the Phantom Troop that was kept open by Chrollo was actually Bakunoda's. So, implies that he doesn't want anybody else to take her spot, even though that she is dead. The whole point, one of the points of the spiders is when someone in the spiders dies, they can let somebody else come in, but I guess out of respect for Bakanoda and to honor her memory, that spot has been kept open. So, kind of a sweet sentiment, especially after knowing what happened with the Phantom Troop's backstory. But let's just jump right into the chapter. In chapter 406 of HunterxHunter, titled Regalia. As we start things off directly after last week, where Nobunaga's group end up joining the sub-boss of the Char family in a very sketchy looking doorway in a very narrow hallway, as they're going towards their way to the next tier of the Black Whale, to tier 2, I believe. Now, here's one thing that they mention is that Nobunaga can't bring his sword because, well, he obviously, it is obviously a weapon. He could probably get himself shot by the military once they see him. So, makes sense. Interesting piece of dialogue that a lot of people have been speculating over is Nobunaga saying that he made this sword. And apparently, it's because he lost his sword when him and Henry went to the Haley base and they got forcibly pushed out. His original sword was confiscated. So everyone's saying, did Nobunaga make a replica? Did he conjure it using conjuration? That's the whole thing. It's not explained. He just said he made this. So it could be either or. I'm going with the fact that he just had like a replica made or something, or conjuration. Either one works. But now then, we go to tier 2, into the pathway to tier 2. And man, this 2-page spread showcasing the troop just trying to go up the stairs and seeing just the inner workings of the Black Whale between these different tiers is just insanely detailed. Like, my god, this feels like something from like a dystopian steampunk manga right now. The amount of detail Togashi put into this is insane. Now, they go on to say that what's going on here is essentially like trash disposal, waste removal. And this is above tier 5, which is where other people are, so it's kind of dark considering that the Kakin Empire values people on tier 5 to be lower than the literal trash that they get rid of. So, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. But I like this piece of dialogue stating that the Char and the Shiyu kind of work together in terms of overseeing this area to kind of get rid of, well, let's just say, get rid of the people that they kill. If they oversee it, they get contractors that are willing to overlook things that is done in this area. They can kind of get away with whatever the fuck they want. But I do like the fact that Nobunaga brought up the fact that the Haley might have actually taken the spots, or at least pretended to be these contractors, and by doing this, they can escape the full oversight of the Char and the Shiyu by killing more people and dumping them in this processing plant, which, by the extent of the contagion ability, has them level up even more, so that literally makes them stronger over time, and so they could actually, well, do all these murders without anybody noticing, which is kind of fucked up. And yeah, and I like how Finks and Phaeton are like, yeah, we've kind of done similar stuff like this before, to an extent, with how Nobunaga's thinking, and I agree that the Char vice boss states that being with the troop makes him feel like a law-abiding citizen. That's actually kind of funny for a second in command of a mafia family that puts hits out on people does. That's kind of funny. But Nobunaga, in a way to kind of like head back and ask a couple of things around, ends up giving a pretty decent excuse by telling Finks and Feintan about that guy's ability that could just be automatic, just defensive ability that can't be interfered with to push them out of the base. And so he kind of has a good reason to kind of go back, especially considering the fact with the a good reason to go back because of the whole Haley contractor thing. He's going to go back to ask them questions, and he ends up leaving them off by giving them this piece of information about this counterattack type net ability at the Haley hideout. So kind of gives Finks and Phaeton, despite last minute, a hint with them being like, okay, so we have to let them attack us first for actual self-defense. A bit of a loophole for this net ability, which is actually pretty damn cool. We then cut to the inside of the Haley hideout, where the oyster that Henry threw in, which was the transceiver, ends up getting turned off. essentially the transformation from Henry's Nen ability seemingly ran out, because I believe there's a time limit for how long these things can in fact be transformed with his ability. And so this turns off in the hideout of the Haley, and we start to hear it beeping. So this might be foreshadowing to the Haley finding this transceiver, planting it somewhere else, and then subsequently jumping Finks and Phaeton, which is really bad. These two are strong, don't get me wrong, but Finks kind of needs a bit of a wind-up for his Nen ability. Same with Phaeton. So that's kind of, they're good at combat, but their abilities are kind of like long-haul types from what I can remember of how they're used. But it's also bad because with Nobunaga gone, the Phantom Troop is now further divided. Everybody is scattered all over the place with how things are, and with how things are going with this chapter especially, this might be the end of the Phantom Troop, because after this transceiver turns back, we cut back to Henry and the blood guy, who I can't really remember all too much, asking where Lynch is, the girl with the ability to punch people in order to get their inner thoughts after asking a question. Apparently, she went back to the office, but shortly after, somebody comes up and basically gets the attention of Henry, having us see Lynch's dead body with her neck twisted on the opposite direction. And so it's obvious that she was killed, and man, but all in all, you did not do a good job of disposing the body right now, because based on the events that have transpired, only like, I don't know, like a day or two has passed, if I can remember correctly, since they found the fake Hisoka, which was Benalinov. So he didn't do a good job with disposing of the body in this instance, but man, he really screwed up on this one, because now Henry and Blood Guy are kind of going back and forth over, wait, was that a fake Hisoka? How did Lynch die? Was she manipulated? Did somebody turn into her? And based off of all the pieces of information that we have right now and Henry's quick deductions, it's fairly obvious that somebody might have turned into Lynch to kind of get them off their backs. And it's very possible that the Hisoka that they did find was potentially a fake, and maybe wanting to kind of box them and lower their options. And it's fairly obvious, despite them not saying it, that they kind of got a decent understanding that it is the Phantom Troop at the end of the day that might be manipulating them. Honestly, ever since the troop came in, things have just been a bit more chaotic, especially considering the fact that Blood Guy, I keep forgetting his name, says that Lynch was very out of character. So, based off of this, Henry ends up deducing that the person that they found was a fake Hisoka. He silenced her to keep this how it is, and essentially let the rest live, and to say that Hisoka was found, not realizing it was actually the fake. And so it's either, and so the fake Hisoka manipulated her body, or ended up just flat out turning into her to kind of take suspicion away. Because since they found the fake Hisoka first, the fake would figure out they would just hide him and kind of give permission to the side of the search for Hisoka, would not just end up being in vain. Again, it's just based off what they have right now, and that they're basically coming to the conclusion that if it was the troop, they'll have to go to war with the Char, because the troop, at least with Phaeton and Nobunaga's group, is kind of in league with them, kind of have a bit of an alliance. So if this is true, at least to them, which we all know it's true, that means they'll have to go to war with them to avenge Lynch. And I like how, as we transition over to Chrollo's side of the story, Henry and Blood Guy, again, tell me his name in the comments, I'm probably going to forget anyway, basically say that gonna avenge her death no matter what, with that look in their eyes with determination and anger. So, yeah, shit's gonna hit the fan now, all thanks to Benalinov making a really, really bad decision by not properly of disposing the body that he ended up killing that could start a full-on mafia war. Because with everything that's going on with the Haley, the Phantom Troop, all split up, going their own direction. The Char, the underboss of the Char, who now I know his name is Wang, which I feel like Kenny Wang would actually be a pretty easy name to remember for me, but I don't know, my brain is a goldfish sometimes. Him seemingly being in league with Morena and the Haley as like a spy, shit's gonna hit the fan. And it seems like a lot of stuff's gonna go on right now at Hulkenberg's funeral. So things are really coming to a head. We then cut to the funeral procession of Hulkenberg, with this large crowd with all of his supporters and other citizens of Kakin, with Chrollo taking out Skill Hunter, and picking out an ability that conjures a Nen phone as he begins to ring, trying to find what he's looking for, and telling him that the number he's looking for, the person he's looking for, is not in this general area, and so you have a few calls left. You're gonna have to try again. Now, I found online, thankfully, I follow some HunterxHunter accounts on Twitter. Basically, this ability is essentially one that helps find someone's perfect match, whoever they're finding. So, by using this ability, Chrollo is essentially just flat out searching for the person that has the Nen ability that can help him kill Hisoka. So, by doing this, he's searching this crowd, seeing if this person is in this crowd. But from this, the current crowd he's in, it doesn't seem to be the case. And based on how things are, he is questioning if he should loosen his restrictions to his Skill Hunter, but that doesn't seem to be an option for him at the moment. Stating that he wants to try and go to Tier 1, but that's where the succession battle is going, and that's even riskier. That's a lot riskier due to all the shit that's going on over there. And there's a lot more people with Nen abilities hiding in wait during the succession battle. As he goes over how the succession battle bestows Nen abilities, and those who use the abilities and fight until there's a sole survivor. But the interesting part is that he brings up 3 sacred treasures of Kakin that are used in the succession ritual. And these 3 items are obviously the seed urn, which essentially is used for the succession participants to start the battle, and thus awakening their Nen beasts. Then there's the Lotus Anchorite, which I believe in the fan translations is, I think, Unfazed Buddha or something, which is the divine mummy overseer of the succession battle, which, based off that title alone, it seems that it's in charge of just keeping the rules intact and making sure people follow it. And for all we know, that might be the reason why the participants of the succession contest, the princes, cannot leave the Black Whale, because that is being overseen by this statue, this mummy statue, and thus is probably the reason why Kacho was killed from those dark demonic looking hands when she and Fugetsu tried to escape the Black Whale. That is the ongoing theory, but that doesn't seem to be the case since it is the overseer of the battle, which means it probably wants to keep things on track for the battle. And the last one is the Sword of Good Omens, and it's a sword of ascension given to the next king. So this essentially seems to be like the prize for whoever wins the succession contest. And based on how things go, and how Kakin is with this contest, a lot of people are speculating that it might be used to kill the current king to essentially allow the succession for the next king. But I like one thing, and this is pointed out, and I can't remember who pointed this out. I saw a few people talking about it online, in the Reddit, and I believe on X, I saw it somewhere, I forgot to save it, stating that despite all this, it seems that there isn't a ironclad rule that there has to be a sole survivor. There might be some loopholes, but either way, with all these 3 items, this is how the succession contest comes to be, is overseen, and all that. And Chrollo is actually considering stealing at least one of these sacred treasures, because part of his Skill Hunter's ability, one of its restrictions, is that it gets stronger with each item that he steals, every successful heist. And the more valuable, the more coveted an item is, a treasure is, his Nen ability will end up getting a lot more powerful. It'll get stronger and stronger. Which the fact that the Phantom Troop are a group of thieves that steal a bunch of stuff, this showcases that Chrollo, ever since deciding on his Nen ability and cultivating it, has been just constantly upgrading it with every single job they end up doing, which is crazy to me, because Skill Hunter is already a pretty powerful ability, all things considered. This can also showcase how he ended up coming up with the bookmark, getting strong enough to do the bookmark and put those conditions so he can use multiple abilities at once. So that's pretty interesting to think about. Now, Chrollo is considering where exactly these treasures are, but based off of the fact that nothing's truly changed in terms of security and all that, these items aren't in tiers 5 through 3, which makes sense. You probably want to keep these as close to the actual royalty or the most secure spot of the ship as you possibly can. But Chrollo is going over possible scenarios to the fact where even if he finds this, he still has to find the person with the specific Nen ability. Heck, for all we know, he's also using this specific Nen ability, the conjured cell phone, to also help find one of these sacred treasures. But with how he's going about this, he's not entirely sure how things are going to play out. Because if he goes higher up into the tiers, there's a higher chance that he'll face Hisoka without being ready to face him, without having the proper ability to take him down once and for all. So that is definitely something that chrollo is definitely considering, because this is very risky. But he also has to take the risk of entering the succession contest if he goes up to tier 1. That's where not only the Nen ability he's looking for is, but also one of these sacred treasures are, because I believe right now he's in tier 2 because of the funeral processions. If he goes to tier 1, things are going to get messy with how the succession war is, and if chrollo enters there, things are going to be incredibly intense. But right now, he's got to do this at the moment. Even if he might actually not be ready to face Hisoka and face him before upgrading Skill Hunter and getting this Nen ability, he has no problems right now, as his aura is just igniting through these specific panels. I really like the imagery, as the next page is incredibly dark and sketchy looking face of chrollo. As he says, the next best option is already in place. The spiders will go on, even if I die. Now, death flags for chrollo and just the Phantom Troop in general has just been there since this arc had begun. And like I stated, the Phantom Troop has split up multitude of times in this arc, so chances are they might get picked off one by one by the Haley. Maybe now the Shiyu family. Now they know that Lynch is dead because of one of them. Hisoka's on tier 1. So, yeah, things are not going right. Now, I will say, based off of this image at the end, that's my design of the spiders. That is what is worthy of awe. After chrollo says that even if he dies, spiders will go on. The way this is drawn, it's almost like not only is he like holding back his immense anger and impatience, he's probably starting to lose it, because he's been going through a lot of shit over these, ever since Hisoka's killed Charles Nark and Cortopi, and now they're kind of on edge with all this, and Hisoka's kind of like the boogeyman of this series now for the Phantom Troop. So chrollo's probably trying to keep it together, not wanting to rush and take out Hisoka as much as possible, but is trying to keep himself in check and trying to do what is primarily the best option, which is to steal one of these national treasures, upgrade Skill Hunter, and then get the Nen ability he's specifically looking for to take out Hisoka. But right now, it seems like he has to go up to tier 1, because during the funeral procession, the phone continues to ring, as the person whose number was found is out of Nen range. Please change your coordinates and try again. Which, in this 2-page spread, chrollo determines that, well, upstairs it is. Just as I thought. And yeah, that's the end of the chapter. So with how things have gone with this series, like I said, Phantom Troop Death Flag, really up there. chrollo, the most. But with how things are going on with the Shiyu, the Char R, and the Phantom Troop with the Haley, all that is seemingly starting to cultivate and come together in a big thing. Especially considering that the Haley are planning to do something at this funeral procession. So chrollo might not be present for whatever the Haley are going to be doing. Meanwhile, Banalov's in tier 1. Let's see, Franklin's in tier 5 still, I believe. Machi is kind of off on her own. I forgot the name of the girl with the glasses. I completely forgot. But she's seemingly off on her own now as well, despite the fact that she was going to stick with chrollo since her ability's kind of not the best in terms of matchup against Hisoka. Binks and Feitan are off of tier 2 where the funeral is starting, so they'll probably be around for whatever the heck the Haley are going to be up to. And Nobunaga's going back down to tier 3, going back down to tier 3, maybe tier 4, or going back down to tier 4. If he confronts Kenny Wang, maybe he might have an idea that he might be in league with Morena. And if there's a conflict there, things are going to be pretty damn interesting to see how it plays out. Because Phantom Trooper, with all the members that we're knowing right now, it ain't looking too positive for how things will turn out. But look, things will happen. It's Hunter x Hunter. It's difficult to say how things will turn out. All we know is that chrollo's entering tier 1 where Hisoka is and the Secession battle is. So that portion is going to culminate right now at some point. Meanwhile, the mafia stuff's going to start to really get heated right now during this funeral. And a lot of people pointed this out in the previous video, I believe, and over this chapter from the discussions I've seen. It'd be hilarious and kind of twisted if Kurapika was the person that Chrollo ended up needing to look for the specific Nan ability to help kill Hisoka once and for all. And that would lead to Kurapika having a conflict of interest because, as far as I know, I don't think he knows that the troop is on the Black Whale. I know Mizaistan, the Cow Zodiac, knows of the Phantom Troop being on the ship. I don't know if he told Kurapika yet. I'm pretty sure he knows about his vendetta against the troop, so I'm pretty sure he would keep that from Kurapika, but let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about it. Because right now, Kurapika is dealing with a lot on display with the succession battle, protecting Hunswobel, all this going on, and if Hisoka comes into the fray, screws things up, and Chrollo is seen on the ship, along with Banalanov on tier 1, Kurapika will definitely be split right now between his utter hatred of them and his revenge that he's seemingly like kind of tampered down, or his responsibilities and own moral compass. That'd be an interesting conflict to see. But at the end of the day, the big thing is that everything for worst case scenarios is seemingly coming together, and Prince Benjamin, he's gonna get his excuse to enact martial law before Hulkenberg decides to do whatever the hell he's gonna end up doing. So yeah, things are coming together in a big way in Hunter x Hunter right now, and I cannot wait. But what do you guys think? How do you feel about this chapter, everything that we got revealed here? How do you feel about all these threads coming together? How do you feel like things are going to play out in the future? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day. So Hunter x Hunter chapter 407 is out, and first of all, we mainly focus on one particular perspective for more or less 80% of the chapter, and it has to do with a card game. Only Togashi could somehow make an entire chapter on a card game right now that he just made up and make it incredibly tense. But we'll get into that once we get into the actual chapter. But overall, this might actually be my shortest review for this series yet. Watch this be 20 minutes long. I cannot stop yapping half the time. But here's the thing. This chapter, very good. Really nice setup. Also presents Morena in a bit more of a menacing way, despite her being menacing as of right now. And also we might get the answer to who Morena was looking for in the previous chapters. But for all we know, it could just be a bit of a misdirect, for all we know. But we'll get into how things are in a second. Before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now then, on with the chapter. Chapter 407 of Hunter x Hunter, titled Negotiation. And we start this chapter off with the rest of Hulkenberg's funeral processions. As we see people grieving, we see people looking at the casket as it moves onwards up to the higher tiers. And we actually get a date and time right now. It's day 12 of the journey at 1 p.m. Now at first, I did not really think anything of it. However, I've seen people talking about this previously online, and turns out everything that was going on with Kurapika was like in the morning, and when everything started, it was all in the morning, the last couple of things that we've seen. So a couple of hours have passed, so we jumped forward in time, and there's just a couple of hours that are just unaccounted for right now, so we'll probably jump back perspective, which is kind of how this arc has been, and what the first like 3 to 4 chapters of this entire batch of chapters have been. So we might get a bit of a backwards tracking in time to see what happened during the funeral procession, because we're literally at the end of it, at least in this section of the Black Whale, as Hulkenberg's body is being taken up to tier 1. So with all this going on, we actually cut back to Tserriednich's like personal group. They're talking about one of their allies, their friends, Borkson, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, and that she's missing, and that she was part of a certain section for the funeral procession, and they're wondering if she was potentially kidnapped or went after a lead. They're thinking that it's possibly a Nen ability that either manipulated her, or maybe it could have been a Haley assassin that abducted her or even killed her. There's a lot of things that they're speculating about on what exactly happened to her and how it all went down. And they also go over the fact that if one of them was caught, like an agreement they made chapters ago, if they were caught, no negotiations, no rescue, and they're even asking, are they going to stick to that plan? While some of Benjamin's troops are telling them to spread out and keep doing their jobs because the procession's not fully over yet and they're still on high alert. And so now they're going to have to decide on things before all is said and done for their current shifts. Now, these are Tserriednich's friends that were introduced in the last match chapters 2 years ago. They were only seen for like a chapter and a half, diving deeper into the factions, making things more fleshed out. And this chapter focuses on Morena and Borkson, as we cut to her waking up in the Haley hideout facing Morena herself. Also, I just like that we have like a 2-page spread of just Morena and Borkson staring each other down, as well as Borkson getting the lay of the land of the situation, as she is surrounded by 5 other Haley members outside of Morena. So this seemingly implies, with Morena now asking Borksev to join her, but they're not going to do it by force, and we'll go over why she's going to try and persuade her to join them eventually. This seems to imply that Borksev seems to have been the person that Morena was looking for, was having Dogman look for in the previous few chapters. Now, this is interesting, and I right now cannot think of how she could apply to Morena, but for all we know, if she can somehow get her onto her side, perhaps even forcefully, and give her a contagion and do something to help awaken a Nen ability, she might have a Nen ability laden within her that could be a great benefit to Morena, which is something that I've also seen some people talking about, especially considering that there's like a very big imbalance in terms of Morena's fighting force for the type of Nen users, because they think they only have like some conjurers, transmuters, and some enhancers, I believe. So they're kind of running. They don't really have any. They don't have any specialists. They don't have any people with other types of Nen, but like manipulation and stuff like that. So perhaps Borksev has a Nen ability, perhaps that could have done something. But Dogman ended up saying that if he gets close to somebody, he can find out their Nen type or Nen ability. And the guy he was with could abduct somebody no problems if they don't have Nen. So this implies that they were looking for somebody that hadn't awakened Nen, but has the potential to awaken Nen. And since someone is born with their Nen typing, their Nen affinity, Dogman can sniff that out, which is what I'm getting at. So that's pretty interesting to think about. And I'm curious to see what type of abilities will be and what kind of advantage this will be for Morena. But she, instead of doing a regular negotiation, proposes a card game that she calls the negotiation game. And she pulls out a bunch of themed cards and she lays them all out on the table. And this is basically the entire chapter going over the card game, setting things up for their negotiations. Morena has 7 cards face up that Borksev can choose from, and whatever she chooses from these cards, Morena has to abide by these. Meanwhile, Borksev has 5 cards face down, and this game is essentially like a yes or no game, and that's kind of what she's perhaps limited to. If she forfeits the game, she has no freedom other to answer anything with yes or no, even outside of the game. And so, based on how things are like, Borksev originally thinks there's 4 yeses and 1 no, but that's not the case. She actually has 1 yes, 1 no, and a return card, which allows her to take any card from her graveyard and return it into play, which once a card is chosen by the opposing player, it goes to the graveyard regardless. Then there's the Joker, which can be yes or no, so it can be either or, and then there's the X card, which allows Borksev to just abstain from the game, leave the game without any repercussions whatsoever. Doesn't have to answer yes or no. She doesn't have to do anything they say. They essentially get to leave scot-free based on how this is played out. We then get a couple pages of Borksev trying to go over the fact of how this game seems to be stacked in Morena's favor, but in how things seem to be, it might be more stacked towards her favor with the amount of options she has. So this might be a bit of a mind game to try and get Borksev to essentially comply at the end of the day. Leave her with some yeses and no nos, but it all depends on the question or request that ends up happening. And so, yes and no aren't really her friend here. Either or could just screw her over in the worst ways possible. As with this, we also get an explanation of Morena's 7 cards. There's the aim card, which if Borksev chooses that, Morena gets to explain her goals in detail. With that, Borksev has the opportunity to learn about what Morena's up to in this game, in this entire contagion game that she's doing with her entire mafia gang to destroy everything. So that is very tantalizing as something to understand and know about. Next, she has the power card, which allows her to explain her abilities. And although it might go over her head a bit, since obviously Borksev is not an actual Nen user, doesn't fully understand or comprehend Nen, she can only tell the truth without hiding anything. And she'll go into as much detail as she wants. But that is actually a very interesting thing. Considering the fact that Borksev isn't a experienced Nen user, or potentially doesn't even fully comprehend how Nen works, this will place Morena's entire factors. It'll actually be in favor of Morena if Borksev picks that, because she can just tell the truth about her ability to a certain extent, perhaps even half the truth of her ability, and leave something hidden in order to kind of convince Borksev that she shared all the information that she needed. So that way she can just give a good enough explanation of her ability, and Borksev could potentially be satisfied with that and think that she shared her entire ability. So that in and of itself plays into Morena's favor, even if she does explain her ability. But she does, within this entire explanation, whenever she goes over the cards, she says the longer this game takes, there's going to be more risk to both of them. And so they have to talk pretty quickly. So perhaps there are some sort of conditions, because this might actually be a Nen ability. The cards might be Morena's actual Nen ability. Once we finish these explanations, I'll go over the possibility of that. This is something that's been talked about since this chapter released already, but I'll go over that later. But after the power card explaining her abilities, she reveals the question A card, which allows Morena to answer as many questions and as many times as Borksev wants. But it has to be something that doesn't have to do about her goals or her ability. Most likely because there are cards for that as well. But any answers to her questions will only be in the form of yes or no. So that is also a bit of a limitation that seems like to be in both the favor of Morena. So that is pretty interesting to see. But there's also another card, which is question B, which is actually a card that allows Morena to further explain an answer to the question that is asked with question A. But as pertaining to the exact same question, it can't be a new question. So if something is asked to Morena with question A, and Borksev needs more information, she can pick the question B card to get a bigger and more detailed explanation for anything that was potentially left out for the most part until she is satisfied. Now, obviously, one big concern is cheating, as these games tend to be, and Borksev just flat out asked her if she's actually planning on cheating in this game or not. Now, what's interesting is that this panel doesn't only focus on Morena, but we also get too many panels on the side of her, of two of her other companions, two of her other members of the Haley. And that's very interesting because while she ultimately says no, she will not cheat, and that's an answer from her perspective, because we end up going over a whole big quandary over the negative connotations of questions and answers of yes and no, and how it could apply to the question in general, like agreeing with it or disagreeing with it, or being a more personal aspect, which is honestly an incredibly detailed, nuanced way of looking at yes and no to answering a question, which is HunterxHunter. I should have expected something like this to be a bit more in detail. But either way, it's a pretty interesting thing to think about when it comes to just answering questions in yes or no. But yeah, the reason I bring up the fact that Morena brings this up and says, no, I will not cheat, answering the question from her perspective means that she herself will not cheat. However, the fact that we focused on two other characters when she was asked if she was cheating, yes or no, implies that the rest of the people in this room can do something to cheat in Morena's favor to end up placing things on her to actually win the game, and have Borksev lose. So that is interesting, because Borksev definitely, at this point, hasn't thought of the fact that the people surrounding her could cheat in this game if Morena is the one dealing. Or perhaps, I believe one of her allies is dealing in this instant. Now, the thing I do like also, while Borksev is trying to rationalize everything with all the cards, is the fact that Morena is incredibly angry, and she can sense it. She's not a Nen user, but Borksiv can sense the fact that Morena has so much anger within her despite her calm demeanor. And this will probably end up working to her favor or her detriment, because if she plays her cards right, she can use this to essentially get a tell off Morena to get a win off in this game. But at the same time, Morena could also use her anger to an advantage, making it incredibly obvious for her opponent, and thus lulling them into a false insecurity, and thus winning the game by having them pick the wrong card at the wrong time. So, yeah, that is pretty interesting to really consider, because with a game like this, it's all a mind game to an extent. Strategy and a mind game to get into your opponent's head based on their tells, their emotional state, and their tone of voice. So this is pretty interesting to really get into. Now, the last card Morena talks about and shows is the deal card, which allows Borksiv to pick any card that she wants from the graveyard and bring it back into play. However, there is one big caveat. She has to grant a small request of Morena. What that could be, we got no idea. But that's the interesting thing. Any request she asks for. But Morena does state that once she hears what the request is, Borksiv can in fact not do it. But if that's the case, it becomes Morena's turn, and deal will go to the graveyard. And the game ends when Borksiv has one card left, which means she has to win the game when she is down to 2. That is her last chance. If she has 2 cards in play, then yeah, she's done. So that's all the rules for the card games and all the cards. And now the game essentially begins with the shuffling. So that ends the chapter for this issue of Hunter x Hunter. So yeah, we had an explanation of an entirely brand new card game, which might be a Nen ability, surprisingly enough, because this is something that was brought up in some discussions that I've seen, is that Morena's Nen ability is Contagion. We all know that. But with how the Contagion works, by the time you reach level 20, you get to unlock a Nen ability. Then once you reach, I believe, level 30 or 50, it's around there, you unlock your own Hatsu. And Morena should be about level 50 at this point, maybe over that, last I checked. Which means Contagion might be her main ability, but with how Contagion works, she could potentially have awakened a brand new Nen ability on top of her own. It's not impossible for people to have extensions to their Nen abilities or try to develop a new Nen ability that's like adjacent to their Nen type. It's pretty obvious, but it's a lesser control. But if Contagion allows her to create an entirely new Nen ability, and that might be this card game, that would in fact be really interesting and make things a lot scarier. Now, with how this card game works, like I said, it's just a whole mental battle of fortitude and try to get into your opponent's head and try and get all their cards out of play. And just get what she needs to do. Now, Borksiv's cards are face down, so it's all a game of chance. But like I mentioned earlier, very possible that her allies in this area will potentially cheat in Morena's favor. So that's always the case, that will happen. Like I said earlier, Borksiv could be the person that Morena did need, but again, this could just be something that's going on entirely separately, and there's somebody else that we're looking for, and Borksiv is just a red herring to kind of lull us into a false security to reveal something else is what Morena was looking for, but as of right now, this seems to be the case for who Morena was looking for. So I'm excited to see where this turns out, because if Togashi plays his cards right, if he does this in a way that I have faith that he will be a tense chapter of mind games, getting in each other's heads and trying to read each other. The closest thing I can think of from something that I most recently watched was like, I'm going to have to make a JoJo's reference here, but in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, when Jotaro played against the older Darby brother in a game of poker, and he was just doing random stuff with Star Platinum to try and get in his head and get him to fold, despite the fact that he didn't look at his hand, and his hand ended up being completely another ass. But Darby still ended up just succumbing to the pressure of the situation, thinking that the game got rigged in Jotaro's favor with Star Platinum with how fast he is. That's the type of tension I really want this to be on some level, because you can make a game of poker, you can make anything tense with enough stakes, with enough build-up and the way things are presented. And I think Togashi's going to do that. And this is funny because we got basically the main antagonist of this arc, Morena, which she might be the main antagonist of this arc based on how much focus we're getting on her outside of Tserriednich, so that's pretty interesting. And a side character. That is interesting. I think only Togashi can really do this, especially with the character that was introduced 2 years ago. And only had like 5 lines, so that's interesting to really think about. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for this chapter of Hunter x Hunter right now, and this definitely is coming close to 20 minutes at this point, probably. But let me know what you guys think of this chapter in the comment section down below. How do you feel things are going to progress with this? Are we going to cut to somebody else while this is going on to further build attention? Will we finish this part of this card game in the next chapter or two? What do you think Morena plans to do with Borksiv and her purpose for going out of her way to find her? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. I'm going to try and do some more Hunter x Hunter content in between chapter reviews if I have the time. It'll be a similar format to this. Might not be as heavily edited, but I'll let you guys know in advance. But for now, I want to try to do more Hunter x Hunter stuff every now and again, but for now, just chapter reviews. So let me know how you guys feel. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day. So Hunter x Hunter chapter 408 is officially out, and once more, giant information broking of just multiple pieces of information laid out in front of us. We get to learn more about Morena and her origins, how she developed her Nen ability. We actually get to learn a bit more about specific aspects of Nen types, especially specialists, as well as why I can't pronounce things. Borskin was essentially decided upon to be taken in by Morena, and we'll learn a bit more about this negotiation game and how things pertain as things progress forward. And a pretty shocking event happens at the tail end of this chapter that I cannot wait to get into because it has massive implications for how things can happen in the future of the story. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Moving on with the chapter, we actually get to start the negotiation game, and Borskin actually picks the aim card, which allows her to essentially get an idea of what Morena's goals are. Now, what's interesting is that they can have ideal chit-chat between each rounds that doesn't pertain to any of the games. So Borskin ends up using it to determine, pretty on the nose, that Morena's forces are less than 50, about half of that, so really good deductive work on her part. And so Morena ends up asking and says that her main goal is to destroy Kakin, and eventually destroy humanity is how things end up being progressed even further. But the thing I kind of like is that, essentially, Morena doesn't exactly give too much into details for this aspect, and so she has to explain even further. And this is where we end up going into the dark origins of Morena and even darker histories of the Kakin Empire. Also, I just like how in this brief comedic panel where Borskin's like, I kind of need more information, shows that perhaps all it really took, if this game was done multiple times to recruit new members, that nobody really further asks for more information other than Morena wanting to destroy Kakin, or further elaboration on her goals and her origins and all that stuff. So, very possible this is the first time she's experienced somebody needing more information. So that's interesting to know. So, Morena ends up basically showing us what the darker side of the Kakin Empire is. Apparently that she is a carnival orphan, and that there's this thing called the Carnet Levare. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think it's, tell me, I think it's French. Apparently there's a festival that happens in a randomly picked village in the Kakin Empire where the royal family, as well as their confidants and close people to the royal family, go to and sort the people of that village to between entertainers or others. And it's very, very heavily implied that since they're called entertainers, some things happen in this instance, and not good things. I'm not going to say this fully because, let's face it, this video will probably get demonetized by just talking about this stuff. But essentially, afterwards, there was a lot of newborn babies after this event. And so, the carnival orphans are born at this place that is essentially a hospital that's run by the human traffickers, run by the Haili, and this is where the mothers were treated, and thus the children were divided into second-track fakers, aka illegitimate heirs to the throne that end up getting the slashes on their face and eventually are turned into the future heads of the mafia family, and then pretty graphic term, flesh. The other children are designated as flesh, which is what Morena is. And what's interesting is that as this was being explained, Morena led up with the full-on reveal that she is not the real Morena Perdoe. In fact, she somehow got to fake her own death and take the place of the real Morena and is now leading the Haili family. So a couple of chapters ago, when Nobunaga surmised that the actual head of the Haili isn't the actual head of the Haili that was to begin with, again, the man's spot on. I swear, we need to get like a comedy spin-off of the Detective Nobunaga. Anyway, back to the chapter. The whole implications of this is that the people who are designated as flesh grew up in very abusive, very not too great circumstances, and Togashi kind of uses a piece of raw steak and a knife cutting into the middle of it to kind of basically showcase a visual metaphor of what potentially happened. And Morena went through all this stuff for 20 years, and she was considered flesh for 20 years, until eventually she became the boss of the Haili family due to varying circumstances. And she ended up, throughout her years fulfilling this role of hers as flesh, she discovered her Nen ability, and so bit by bit she honed it, and it served as a way for her to plot her whole destruction plan of the Kaking Empire. And here's the thing. The way this is being presented, Morena ended up learning her Nen ability and awakening it all on her own without any outside interference, which is relatively rare to happen. Usually there has to be some sort of outside interference, being attacked with an attack from Nen or being forced or taught to do it through years of training. But Morena managed through all her life experience, managed to realize her abilities and create her ability contagion over the years, little by little, until she took the place of the Haili leader. Now, apparently it's also stated that this carnival happens irregularly, and the last one happened 2 years ago, and this could also imply that other princes that we know of, we might think, oh, they might not be so bad, might have taken place and took a part into this festival. So we gotta look at all the princes a lot differently now. Now, something I looked over was the lese majesté, which is essentially a term used for people that did great offense to the crown or the whole ideals of Kakin. That would be like pure treason, even by the day standards, which is crazy to think about for that empire. So even the littlest thing could get them executed. There's also a piece of information that there's been 7 batches of these flesh children from this festival. So, yeah, that's a lot of stuff that happened. But yeah, the whole idea is that the festival is still going on, even when the whole democratization of Kakin began. So fully utilizing the fact that Morena is just nailing home that Kakin ain't changing anytime soon, and the dark side and all that stuff that's been going on is still happening and will probably never change, which is why destruction is its basic next natural course. And to do that, she needed to find people that would help her achieve her goals with special abilities. And she says that Borkson has a very critical ability and critical role, and that's why she went out to essentially recruit her. Now, obviously, Borkson asks why Morena believes it's her, but Morena says that she has to pick another specific card, question A most likely, to get full-on answers. The cards are then shuffled, as we then end up getting Borkson getting a card picked from her stack by Morena, and it's revealed that the Joker card was taken. And this isn't too big of a loss for Borkson, as yes or no, as established in the previous chapter, could just be a death sentence for her regardless. So that being taken out of the equation isn't a major loss. So she's getting closer and closer to getting the cards that she needs to kind of get out of this game. And after her Joker is taken, Borkson ends up taking the power card from Morena in order to get more of an explanation of her abilities. Also, I just find this kind of adorable that Morena is actually just straight up just flattered by the fact that Borkson twice in a row wants to know more about her. with her backstory, kind of shows that she's not used to people ever really asking more about her. So we end up going into a bit of a crash course, at least crash course on what Nen is, to explain it to Borkson and the abilities, and she doesn't really like know more above the fact that it's technically superpowers. And so we go over like the basics of like awakening Nen and specific attributes and abilities, and thus Morena ends up explaining what her ability is. And she even confirms there are 22 people currently as players in her ability in this game that she's created using her ability, and that they level up, and so they eventually end up getting more people that she kind of classifies as children and growing their own families from it. She rightfully calls it a type of pyramid scheme, which, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Though this is another thing, because apparently their goals and attributes are meant to help assist her in developing her abilities, and she also wants to help develop their own abilities by awakening them. But a key piece of information that obviously Borkson wouldn't be privy to is the fact that Morena conveniently left out how people level up, grow stronger, and eventually end up gaining contagion, patient zero, and doing all that to make more people with awakening Nen abilities, which is the killing to level up. So, yeah, very convenient piece of information to leave out, which is very smart. As we established previously, Morena can be very selective on her information, give enough information to just straight out mislead them, give enough truthful information, but leave out key instances that wouldn't be picked up upon even throughout this conversation. Now, throughout this whole thing, Borkson is being like, I don't want this nation to basically cease to exist. Responsibilities, national responsibility, defense, doesn't really mean much to her. She just wanted to coast through life and just do what she wanted to do. She thought that she was going to end up going into a role as an instructor at a military school, like how she was expecting things to go with Kakin and how it's been. But then Beyond showed up, wanted to go to a new continent, the Dark Continent, and kind of breaking what she initially planned her life to be. And so she doesn't want Kakin to end, because the possibility of her beginning that life might end up happening in the future. And I also like how, well, Morena ends up explaining more that the larger goal here is that they have in common is killing people in general, directly or indirectly, and so they all have different reasons and circumstances, targets and quotas, and those are the small goals that lead up to the larger goal, which will end up being more so destroying humanity. So that is her main thing for Morena. But I like how Borkson, throughout this conversation, is kind of disgusted, but also relieved that she cannot relate to anybody like Morena or her goals. And so she has to get out of this messed up situation as quickly as possible. Now, in terms of like the different categories of Nen, we actually get confirmation that Borkson would fall under a specialist type of Nen user. Someone that is capable of using every form of Nen if they train properly. Obviously going over how Dogman found her. He's an enhancer, enhancing his sense of smell to find people and their Nen affinities and what types they'll end up being able to awaken to. And so Morena ends up diving deeper and deeper into how rare these specialists tend to be by giving a number as like 1 in, I believe, 3,000, which is the closest we ever get to a hard number or percentage of specialists. And so Borkson is like a smaller group of people that will be considered specialists. Heck, Morena even says that Borkson doesn't technically need to be there right now because there's the possibility of 50 or even 60 more people that could potentially be specialists if they awaken Nen are on the ship right now. So even if they fail with Borkson, they still potentially have more people to essentially recruit. And even now, they're actively looking for more people to recruit aboard the ship. Heck, they even point out that one of the people that they ended up discovering was Chrollo in the crowd, which even in this instance, the amount of just auras and just presence that a specialist has is insane. Heck, almost every single arc in the story, from like York New onwards, outside of Great Island, there's been a specialist. The specialists are always just some of the most incredibly dense character abilities and have like their own relevancy in the story to shake things up with how insane their abilities can in fact be, whether they be super major or like relatively minor, until we really dive deeper into things. And so Morena ends up explaining more about Nen abilities, Nen affinities, and how specific people end up learning the limitations and powers of their own individual typings, and how specific Nen types are harder for others if they're too far away from where they are in the Nen tree. Possibility is harder for them to learn like transmuter can have a harder time learning a manipulation ability, so on and so forth. It even goes over the fact that specialists might not even realize once they awaken then that they are specialists until they'll focus on one thing, like let's say enhancer abilities, and in which case by the time they realize, oh, they can do more abilities, it's too late, and though it'll be harder for them to learn like a hybrid ability or the multiple aspects of an ability, which showcases that it is possible for specialists to be relatively weaker if they focus on one singular and an attribute for their ability, even if they do make it stronger. And the fact that Morena is also a specialist that she does reveal in this instance, that's just crazy to really consider, because as she said, she honed her ability bit by bit, which means her specialist ability might have perfectly encompassed every instance of the Nen tree, which means that she's probably the best specialist or Nen user in the story, which is insane to think about with all that to happen, and she awakens her Nen without any of the other previous ways of awakening Nen. So, yeah, that's pretty insane. And Morena kind of wants anybody that's a specialist, or has potential of awakening and becoming a specialist, so that she can actually help lead them to choose a specific ability that will help her in her goals. So, yeah, that is really, really interesting. Now we move on to the next card, and Borkson ends up losing the Yes card. And that is disappointed for everyone, including the people in the room, which ends up relating to the fact that there is no cheating, and they didn't expect any cheating as well. Now we get more information on what happens if Borkson picks the No card. And so Morena essentially states that it's the difference between like the X and the No is that it's a firm stance of, yeah, no willingness to work together, and she rejects everything. But this would essentially make the fact that her and everybody she knows will be more or less considered flesh to Morena and her group, basically making them farming material to level up. And so that will definitely make things a lot more difficult. And yeah, that's essentially a death sentence, as we all kind of assumed. They're not going to redo the game until Borkson ends up, well, agreeing, since we now know that there are more options for new specialist users to enter the Haley family to help out Morena. So Borkson, if she ends up fully declining, then she's dead. Full on. And that's the trap. Yes, no, Joker, doesn't matter. It all leads to her eventual death or joining of the Haley family. But I do like how Morena states full on that the X card will remain the same. If she ends up getting the X card at the end of the day, the game is revoked. Her memory, Borkson's memories won't be erased. She'll still get the information that she's learned about the Haley family and their goals and Morena's ability. So that way she can just leave and no one will end up being attacked. Anybody that she knows won't be full-on attacked by Morena and her family. Now, obviously, the fact that she wants to destroy all of humanity eventually, that just means prolonging their deaths to an extent. But that is a plus. She could still share the information. And this, throughout this whole conversation, ends up leading to the full-on confirmation, as we all thought, that the negotiation game with these cards is, in fact, an ability. Obviously, high risk, high reward, no cheating, thus requiring some risk involved to increase the power of the Nen ability, aka the negotiation game, to make things as fair as possible, which means this might be part of Contagion, a subsection of Contagion, which is why we got more explanations on how specialists tend to work and how we get stronger specialists that can specialize in all these different typings, and the bit of information that Morena does, in fact, and did work around her ability to improve it bit by bit over the last 20 or so years. So, yeah, I like this confirmation. But it could also be a bit of a misdirect. It could just be one of the other people, maybe the people in the room shuffling the cards, and that's their ability for all we know. But I like the idea that this is part of Morena's ability, which makes her even more deadly, and makes this type of ability even deadlier than I initially thought. But that's basically it for what we get for the card game for this chapter, as we move on to the next card to be picked. And we then end up getting the X card removed next, which leaves only the No card, which is instant death, and then return, which means survival. Meaning that Borkson, if she is left with the return card, can in fact get back X and void the game, get out of there, and share her information. So there's a 50-50 shot of what happens now. But before the game continues, before Borkson can even pick another one of Marina's cards for more questions and to further elaborate more stuff, we hear a huge announcement enacting martial law on the Black Whale, ending the chapter. And this is major because the fact that we got martial law enacted in the end of this chapter means that over the course of this game, this meeting between the end of the procession and now, something happened. Now, we all know the only real things that could potentially happen for this to be the case is if one of the three princes that are the benefactors of the Mafia families, Tserriednich, Luzerus, or Zhang Lei, were killed. And my money is on Luzerus being killed, or even an attempted assassination attempt, because we have all that stuff going on with Melody, leading to Benjamin enacting martial law, going through the courts and all that shit. Or, which might be a long shot, maybe Zhang Lei might be the one that died. Because over the last batch of chapters, we've had a lot of focus on Zhang Lei's coins from his Nen Beast. What if that eventually led to his death? What if that was part of his life force, and giving them out actually depletes his life, and maybe even leads to bad luck or bad karma in the future and led to his death? I just find it suspicious that we're focusing a lot on this aspect of the Nen Beast's ability, and now we're getting martial law declared. The pieces feel like it might lead into that direction because while Luzerus seems like the most obvious option, I wouldn't be surprised if Zhang Lei was killed over the course of these last few hours. We also got kurapika's Nen class going on, so whatever happened there might have enacted the martial law for all we know. There's other factors, but it's mainly what happened in these last couple of hours that determine what in the hell is going on next. And I am insanely excited to see how this plays out in the future. We also got Hulkenberg doing what he's doing, so yeah, so much stuff is going on right now, and this arc, I doubt this arc's ending within the batch of chapters that Togashi is currently writing, because a lot of pieces and plot threads, while converging, are definitely going to basically spin all over the place until it crashes and burns into a all-out war. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this chapter and everything that happened in the events of it. Everything about Marina's backstory, elaboration of her abilities, the new stuff we learned about specialists and the Nen abilities, Borkson being a specialist, and also the fact that, well, martial law has been enacted. So, yeah, how do you think things are going to play out? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day. Hunter x Hunter Chapter 409 is out. However, I know I said I was doing the official translations, but I'm going on vacation starting Saturday all the way till next Wednesday, so I won't be able to cover the official translations for Hunter x Hunter, so I'm going by a fan translation that I have right now, just so I can give you guys updates on what's going on with the manga, and see what's going on, even my thoughts in between. So, excuse me, if things are different in the official translations, I will address them in the following review. So, before we start anything, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now that out of the way, let's get right into the chapter. So chapter 409 of Hunter x Hunter, titled Negotiations, Part 3. And we actually got announcements for each of the tiers and what they're going to be doing during this special martial law declaration. And Borkson trying to understand and use these pieces of information to narrow down where the Haley hideout is, due to how specific announcements can only be for specific tiers. If there are announcements towards tier 1 and 2, then you have to be at least on these higher tiers to get these announcements. Otherwise, you're on the lower tiers. So, first off, they're basically saying that for the passengers of tier 5, they're to follow usual instructions as military police and labor officials issue anything for the visitors and all that. So tier 5 tends to be relatively the same. Tier 4, for tier 4, all connecting passageways are going to be sealed off as a precautionary measure to ensure that any issues from the upper tiers do not, under any circumstances, spread downwards. They're taking all possible measures to maintain safety, and there will be no impact whatsoever on tier 4. Now, for passengers of tier 3, they will have to face the nearest wall with their hands up on their knees until further instructions are stated, and they are not to move whatsoever until they receive any orders from the Royal Army. And I like how Borkson is concluding, based off of everything that's going on, Morena's just shock and unpredicted reaction to all this. She is concerned over this. And so Borkson is going to take the opportunity to continue the negotiation game as the announcement is going on to not only hit Morena off her game, and maybe she'll be a bit distracted, but also to further get out of this precarious situation that she's currently in. So there's that. So she's going to multitask, get through the game, learn what she needs to know, and basically get what she needs based off of this announcement. And so she actually decides to continue the game with the next card she's choosing from Morena, interestingly enough, being the deal card. And if we remember, the deal card works by doing a small task for Morena, and thus Borkson can take any card back from the graveyard and add it back to her hand to continue the game onwards. So there's that. So now we get Tier 2's announcement that all civilians have to return to their rooms immediately and stay on standby and make sure they don't have any accessories or personal belongings on them of any kind, keep all the doors open, and have their hands spread on the table or hold their hands up and raised above their shoulders and wait for further instructions. And I like how Morena is shocked that Borkson's continuing the game right now, but she didn't expect the risk to their side to surface at a time like this, so things are going to progress as they further along. And so Morena's request for Borkson to do in this situation for the deal card is for her to kiss Morena. And Borkson is just confused over this, and obviously we all know that Morena's whole deal with her contagion ability is that you have to kiss her, and it has to be a deep kiss, obviously. So yeah, there's that. So that is how things go. That's what Borkson has to do, and Morena actually breaks down the 3 conditions of her ability to be fulfilled. 1, the conclusion of the negotiation game must be a yes. So it seems like the negotiation game is also a part of her ability as well, so that kind of confirms it a bit more. 2, or B, you must kiss Morena and become infected with her ability, thus starting the game and having the net abilities awakened within them. And 3, you must be present at the scene where either she or one of the other members that are currently infected commits a murder. So casually bring up that they are, doing a murder so they can progress the game and all that. And apparently the order doesn't matter as long as all 3 conditions are met, and that's how she will be infected with her ability. So just the kiss is just one of the conditions, but depends on how things go. Borkson will end up getting potentially all 3 right depending on how things go. But as this goes on, we learn that they get an announcement for Tier 1 for everyone to return to their rooms and wait for further instructions, and depending on how the investigation goes, their usual daily activities of freedom will continue as they are, and that shocks Borkson on how things have been set up to bring her to Tier 1. That means they're potentially on Tier 1. And Borkson ends up coming to the conclusion that perhaps all this was set up in advance, and since she basically faked her way into being a second track faker, a member of the Haley family, the boss, a room on Tier 1 was most likely prepared in advance for her. So the idea of having a place on Tier 1 is definitely a thing. However, there is the intriguing way of her getting from Tier 3 to Tier 1. We all know it's based off of one of Morena's family members' net abilities. So we all know that that's the way that they got to their current location for the hideout. And so, as all this goes on, Borkson accepts Morena's deal, and they kiss off screen, which causes Morena to blush and kind of awkwardly says, "I'm sorry," and apparently brings it up that this was Borkson's first kiss, and also this is just comedic relief moment in this incredibly tense situation. And so through all this, Borkson just grabs the X card back from the graveyard, puts it back to her hand. And so, yeah, we get back to the game, and so they're about to deal the cards. But Borkson tries to play a bit smarter, telling them to hold off, as she wants to take a look at the cards again because she didn't look at the cards. She didn't have the cards in her line of sight during the off-screen kissing. So she just wants to make sure the cards are the same. And so Morena's trying to equate this to someone not trusting their partner and looking at their text messages and all that, which is pretty, honestly, a pretty funny comparison. But yeah, she allows Borkson to flip him over, and along with the X card she just got back, the return card and the no card are there. So yeah, that seems to be the case. Everything seems to be back to where it should be. And so, cards are dealt again, shuffled, and now they have to go ahead and draw. And immediately Borkson draws the X card and it goes away once again. So, despite the trouble of getting it back, Borkson has now lost the card that voids the game once more. So it all comes down to the return card at the end of the day to see how things go. So, yeah, all that stuff for Morena in her hand is question A, question B cards, and the yes card. And so, while Morena is trying to say that it doesn't really matter if you just want to ask one question, you can just skip question A and just pick question B instead. But Borkson chooses question A, and so she can ask as many questions as a whole in quick succession. And Morena can only answer yes or no. So she ends up going through all the individual tiers all the way up through tier 1 and 2, but Morena answers that the hideout is not on any of the tiers. And so, as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wait, are they in a pocket dimension where it's not really anywhere? But as they're wondering what's going on, they all know. She ends up asking if she's lying. She says no. If it's on Black Whale, it's yes. And Borkson asks, the hideout was created through a Nen ability. And Morena answers yes and no, which is interesting. Now, we all know that specific aspects of how this whole thing was built and set up was due to a bunch of Nen abilities in quick succession. But after getting this answer, there is a shudder, a loud noise. And this is where Borkson figures out where the hideout is. It is between tiers 2 and 3. And Morena answers yes. And based off of how things are, the noise that they heard and felt was the doors locking between tiers 2 and 3. And so that's what they felt. And so this whole hideout was most likely built in preparation far in advance to have things set up in order to build up this hideout. And so we keep asking more questions. Does the hideout have multiple entrances? Or are they located in a place accessible to the public? Yes and no. Yes, because we all know one of the main entrances is through one of Morena's family members' Nen abilities. Are there multiple entrances? Yes. And we end up learning that there is at least 5 entrances. And Borkson understands and thinks about how Morena is kind of like, once we got to 4 and 5, she was like, like thinking and pauses. Not because she's trying to avoid a situation, but because she wanted to ensure that what she was saying was indeed the truth. Obviously, from the rules of the game, limitations and vows, gotta use them all up to the best advantages. And so Borkson is going to use those limitations for the game into her advantage as well. And so she ends up confirming that with Morena included, there's 21 members of the Haley family. Now, I believe, so that, based on how we knew things from the beginning, I think at least 2 members were killed off earlier on in this arc, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It's been a little while, obviously. And so Borkson keeps asking. If she manages to get out of there safely, she intends not to say anything, yada yada, yada yada yada, and ends up confirming that Morena will honor their deal and leave her be. And Morena says yes. And then Borkson asks the important question. If she picks the no card as her last card, Morena will kill her. And she answers yes. And so, of the 21 members, Morena's the only specialist. We end up basically confirming that there are more than one enhancer in the group, you know that. And Morena also doesn't know all of her... Another question is that Morena doesn't also know all of the abilities of her family members. So that is an interesting thing to go about. Most likely could be the fact that a lot of them are lower levels, so they haven't manifested their Nen abilities just yet. So that does track and shows she wouldn't know 100% what all their abilities would be until they reach that level. And so Borkson's trying to bring out every last piece of information, and so she ends up coming to one last succession of questions to confirm some stuff from Morena, stating how she's learned so many things talking to her and that she's come to feel grateful for this chance. If she ends up with the card that allows her to leave, she's thinking of changing Kakin in her own way. But she confirms that Morena has no intention of changing her goal. Morena says no. She ends up saying, you have absolutely no intention of changing your goal. Morena also says no. Borkson keeps asking, no matter what happens, you have no intention of changing your goal. No. And Borkson ends up asking, even if it's just a little bit, if there was any way to find some sort of compromise. But Morena says no. There's no way that she will change her goal, with a relatively somber look on her face, showcasing that she might, at the end, maybe want to change things a little tiny bit, but is fully resolute in what she's doing, what her goals are, and wants to follow through no matter what, and doesn't want to change anything whatsoever. So I like how Borkson, over these batch of chapters, understood Morena and her family a lot more, and based on that, she is probably trying to find some sort of empathy within Morena, especially after her whole backstory, to try and convince her to alter her plans a little bit. Obviously, not just for the Destruction King, but for humanity as a whole. But either way, it's still a concerning thing to think about, and it is a shame because you do see Borkson kind of wishes that she could change Morena's mind at the end of the day, because even though she understands her decision, she kind of doesn't want this to be the case, regardless of the outcome. And so we come to the final dealing between the two cards, the return card and the no card. And so they decide to make their decision at the same time and flip the cards. If Morena ends up flipping over the R card herself, Borkson gets the no card and she dies. But if it's the opposite's true, Borkson can leave. And so they flip it over at the exact same time, and Borkson gets the return card. And that sweet sigh of relief that she managed to get out of this alive was just precious at the end of the day. So yeah, she got out of the situation. She got the return card, and so Morena just says, congratulations, a pity, but it can't be helped. Now, grab the card you want to exchange for the R card, and the game will be over. But Borkson ends up saying, I kind of gripped the R card too hard, and it ended up crumbled. But Morena says, don't worry about it, we replace the cards every single time, so it's a relief. And so Borkson goes on to grab her card. And so Morena ends up asking, is that not a mistake? And so we turn over and we see that Borkson didn't choose the X card, but chose the Yes card, which ends the chapter with her saying that this isn't a mistake. So this is something I was not expecting, and I'm sure all of us weren't expecting this to happen. Well, we thought we were going to cut to what was going on during the negotiation game to see why martial law was enacted. Seems like Togashi is just fully concluding the negotiation game and everything going on with Borkson and Morena, and we're getting a unexpected choice by Borkson to join the Haley family, become a specialist, and help Morena out. And Morena's surprised by this too, showcasing no manipulation or mind control at this instance. And everyone in the room is kind of surprised at Borkson's choice. And I am not sure what she's going to do with this. Because, while we all expected her to pick the X card at the end of the day, my guess is with this last batch of questions and getting the information that she was getting, and Morena's responses to all her questions, maybe Borkson decided it would have been best for her to join Morena and maybe sabotage from the inside, maybe try and get her to change her mind. I don't know. I legitimately don't know. This is something I was not expecting to happen whatsoever, especially by Borkson's own choice. So things are definitely going in a direction that is definitely unexpected, and I'm curious to see how Togashi is going to explore this, because, yeah, I was not expecting Borkson to join the Haley family willingly after getting through this very tense game and figuring out where the hideout is, learning all this information, all that shit. But she picked the Yes card and joined the Haley family, and is now basically going to be part of Morena. I don't know what's going to happen with this, and Togashi continues to be one of the most unpredictable writers in manga that I have come across in every story that I've read. He is up there with one of the most unpredictable people out there, and I am so excited to see what is going to happen next. Things are definitely going to be really, really tense going forward, and I feel like now the negotiation games are done, we're probably going to move on to what happened between then and now. Between the start of the negotiation game, or when Borkson was abducted, and now with Morena. So many things to dig deep into, to the point where I'm not even sure where things are going to begin. But all I know is that within the next few chapters, maybe next chapter will end things off for a relatively big change-up. But what do you guys think of this chapter and everything that we learned so far? What did you think of Borkson's decision to join Morena at the very end? Let me know in the comments below. I am legitimately confused, and I want to know what happens next. So yeah, tell me your thoughts, opinions, and theories in the comment section down below. And with all that said and done, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Shows you enjoy the content I make on the channel, and shows you want to see more. And I will probably correct things if there is a difference between the fan translation and the official translation. So let me know in the comments once the official comes out. That way I know if there's any mistranslations or anything to address when it comes to Chapter 410 when I eventually review that. Or would you like me to just do the fan translations so you guys can get these videos a bit earlier? Let me know. I might go back to fan translations, but I'm still kind of set on the officials. But let me know in the comments. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day. Well, the time has officially come. Hunter x Hunter, after chapter 410, is back on hiatus. Now, unlike the last hiatus, which took 2 years, with how things are, last I checked, Togashi had up to like 413 all the way finished to be ready to be released, and drafting and inking left to do for up to chapter 420, 423, for what I believe that still needs to be finished, inked, and fully set up. So there's a lot more that's already like close to complete or in the process of being like completed, unlike last time. And this hiatus came to be primarily because Togashi took a back surgery, from what I can believe. Not confirmed that it's his back, but chances are it was his back. And he's recovering, and so the hiatus is definitely much needed. So for right now, I don't think this hiatus will be as long as the last one, or the one before that, which was 4 years, which I believe was the longest Hunter x Hunter was ever on hiatus. And when that hiatus ended, that was when I fully caught up to Hunter x Hunter, which is funny enough as it is. But either way, we left off at a pretty interesting space for a hiatus, and I think it's a good place to end things off, and also a good volume ender of a chapter, because a good amount happened that I cannot wait to get into. But also, I will let you know, this isn't the end of Hunter x Hunter content on the channel. I have a few video ideas in mind. They won't be weekly, maybe once every 2 weeks, whenever I get things set up, until we get news of new chapter releases. So for now, it's going to be a bit sporadic, but I will have some Hunter x Hunter videos planned for you guys. I already have one in the chamber that I'm going to release maybe before the end of the year, so look forward to that as well. But yeah, after this chapter, I still have some Hunter x Hunter stuff that I really want to talk about in the future, so look forward to all of that. And before we jump into things, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now then, on to chapter 410 of Hunter x Hunter, Negotiation Part 4. Now, we start off the record from last chapter, where Borkson somehow chose the yes card, so now she will be joining Morena's entire Mafia family, and we all assume maybe it's some grand master plan from Borkson to somehow do things in a way that we never anticipated. No, Borkson didn't intend to pick the yes card. In fact, Borkson just lost all real accountability in the game, because it's revealed that Borkson cheated. Back in the last chapter, when Borkson inspected the cards, she did an indent on the return card very briefly, so that she would know which is which. That way when she picks a card, which is what she did, she would pick the return card. And when she crumbled it up, that was her essentially getting rid of the evidence, because Morena wouldn't be able to tell, the person shuffling wouldn't be able to tell, because they would just look at the top of cards, at the top of the cards. So it was all relatively a perfect plan. But loophole, because it is now, if anybody had any real speculation, it is 100% confirmed the negotiation game is part of Morena's contagion ability. So, all said and done, full confirmation, no more second guessing whatsoever. The second that Borkson cheated, she essentially forfeited the game and only can do things in yes or no. And based on how things are going, how she cheated, broke the rules, she fell under the manipulative aspect of Morena's ability, and that kind of disappoints Morena, because of how they got to know each other and how they shared information in the previous couple of chapters. Morena most likely just felt disappointed that Borkson just cheated her way through this whole thing, despite having a relatively decent connection and actually really starting to like her. So I understand, as shocking as it is, the disappointment that she has in Borkson cheating a literal incredible game of just life or death at this point. So she basically had only yes and no, and due to everything that happened, she basically had no choice but to pick the yes card based off of the conditions and the consequences of cheating and forfeiting the game in this manner. So now, Borkson is more or less a part of the Haley family 100%, as she had no choice but to say yes to joining. And so, she gets the full breakdown of Morena's ability, being Contagion, a tool to love, and essentially you level up. She equates it to a game app. And so you start off at level 1 or level 0, and you get 1 point for killing somebody. If you kill a Nen user, you get 10 points. You kill a prince, it's 50. And the game doesn't end until either the player themselves becomes a master, aka a master 0, a patient 0 essentially, and start their own contagion game. And so that's how it works. Either Morena dies, but before Borkson essentially reaches that high enough level, or based on the wording of the phone dying, the container dying, Borkson dies. So that is already a really interesting aspect of Morena's ability. So that is pretty damn interesting to think about. But I like how we get this really cool panel of Morena all silhouetted like a demonic being, stating that whether Borkson chooses to level up or not, it's up to her, but they will betray her the moment that they realize she's of no use to them, and whether she stays here or goes back to her friends is up to her. She's free. Their goal is to kill people after all. So yeah, and while this panel does look incredibly sketchy, almost like Togashi just wasn't able to finish this one singular panel from this chapter, I will go on record and in the opinion that some other people have had, and I think this would be really cool, is Togashi did this on purpose to showcase just the menacing aura of these characters. And this is obviously just everybody, Morena included, just exuding their ren over Borkson. Now that Borkson is an end user, I can fully feel the onset of just incredibly hostile aura being projected towards her, forcing her to the ground. So yeah, that is a really cool panel, and that's probably why I put it up as a thumbnail. But Borkson in this instance realizes that she has a time limit now. If they find another specialist candidate before she does anything, she'll be eliminated instantly. And if she equates to her ability as a phone app, Borkson will assume that Morena will be able to see and hear everything that Borkson sees and hear, because another really cool instance that we learned about Morena's ability, that she's actually able to essentially know the location, the status, level, and points of every single member that is under the influence of contagion. So she has eyes and ears everywhere based on how this works. Now, obviously, once again, she has no idea what their specific abilities are. Once they awaken them, most likely, but the fact that she has this much information is definitely incredible. But after this, Borkson says she's going to go back to her people, and she has every right to do so. She is free, but Morena reminds her that the HxH family is also her people now as well. So Borkson leaves to go back to her friends. We have no idea how that's going to happen, but she has a purpose now to essentially level up and get her ability as quick as possible, but she has to kill people to do so. So that's going to be interesting to see what exactly happens in that instance. But before she leaves, she asks Morena to show her around so she can get to know her comrades more. So yeah, she is going to leverage this as much as possible. Obviously, Morena also stated that betraying each other and killing other members isn't forbidden, but yeah, for all we know, Borkson could try and just eliminate other HxH members, but we have no idea how that's going to fully just affect her stance in this whole debacle that she's in. So there's a lot to consider, but Borkson is definitely another major player in this game, and if she does awaken to her specialist abilities, I'm curious to see what type of ability she will end up, cultivating, because it's a specialist. Practically anything is on the table as long as there's the right conditions and limitations placed upon it, so it can work in a very powerful manner, but only in specific conditions. So I'm curious to see where that will play into things. We then cut to Benjamin's soldiers and the military essentially just clearing Tier 3 with martial law being enacted. But then a soldier goes up to one of the captains, says Case S, and we actually get to see room 3101, which, if you don't remember, is the special door that leads directly to the HxH hideout based off of one of the members' then abilities. Now this was sealed off as this instance, but a total of 3 soldiers have gone in and disappeared, and they just vanished, so they're wondering what's going on. Now, we all know that anybody that enters through there is essentially free fodder, free leveling up fodder for the HxH members, so based off of when we end up cutting back to Prince Benjamin, when he's told about this instance, he just tells them to just keep it under surveillance, leave him be, and I'm sorry, but Benjamin, he has no idea what's going on, so I fully understand his reasoning, but if more and more of his soldiers just go in, disappear to a room that's essentially connected to a room full of men users, that's just free levels, free kills for the HxH family. And I wouldn't be surprised if Borkson essentially saw this and tried to take advantage of the situation in order to level up as fast as she possibly can. Granted, these are regular people, so it's just one level. She have to kill like 50 people to get full access to her Nen ability and develop it. But as Benjamin is going through leading his soldiers in martial law, we learn that Luzurus and Zhang Lei are missing. We know that Zhang Lei right now went to Tier 2 before martial law was enacted, so it's essentially stated that perhaps he sought refuge with the Shiyu family. That way, since that is the family that he himself is just, well, over. But also Luzurus is missing, which is very interesting because last time we learned about Luzurus was there was an assassination attempt on him by Melody, Fugetsu, and Kaiser, so it seems very likely that the assassination or attempted assassination of this prince might have actually succeeded, and that helps trigger martial law. So, yeah, a whole lot of things we still need to know about. But what's interesting is that we actually get Benjamin's inner dialogue. He says, 10 hours from onset to coma. Death comes 2 hours after that. I have about 9.5 more hours I need to eliminate the princes by then. So this implies, as we further end up being stated in the chapter, that Benjamin might be infected with the virus that Hulkenberg got infected by, the bioweapon that Balsamilko had to try and slowly kill Prince Hulkenberg. Now, based off the dialogue at first, we would assume maybe, just maybe, Hulkenberg managed to switch into Benjamin's body and he's talking about his original body. But no, we end up getting more of Benjamin's dialogue as he's talking about he has to officially be anointed successor before he dies, and he can hand the throne over to his child with an emergency law, and he needs a letter from his father for succession, and then once he dies, his illegitimate child will end up becoming the next heir, the next prince. So with how that goes about, he will have a successor even if he dies, so in a sense he will win the succession contest, and somebody from his bloodline will be the next king. And so with that, he actually has 4 princes left to really take account for, to really bring this into head. Also, look, I just like how we have about 3 full-page spreads in this chapter, because after we get this piece of inner dialogue, Benjamin makes it to the Justice Bureau. And now that he's arrived at the Justice Bureau, he is met by 3 familiar faces: Kaiser, Mizaistone, and Boltzebek, I think I'm pronouncing the name right. 2 of the members of the Zodiac, the dragon and the cow. And this is an interesting standoff because Benjamin is essentially trying to merge all 3 branches of government so that he can enact martial law and have full control and make the Justice Building his main center of command, and that he wants these 3 to be his witnesses. And so, as Mizaistan rightfully asks, he needs a letter of succession for Benjamin, and also full on to provide a basis for declaring martial law. And so Benjamin says there's bioterrorism orchestrated by Tserriednich and Hulkenberg. The collaborator was in the military, had a sample under development, and was brought on board. There were multiple co-conspirators, several suspects were arrested and are now being questioned. Some of the suspects were accompanying the prince's security teams when they were taken to secure locations to be safe, and that he would like to complete administrative steps without delay. And so Mizaistan recognizes that he's right now going to use the princes on Tier 1 as hostages to secure the 3 branches of government. And so he states that everything that he says is most likely mixed in with half-truths, twisted, and that he really is an impulsive dictator that wants to take the shortest route to fit what he wants. Which is exactly why Balsamilko was there, to keep him in line, to be patient and think things through. But now that it seems like he is infected by the very bioweapon that he wanted to use on Hulkenberg, and to an extent technically did, with Hulkenberg also doing a whole complicated thing, it seems the irony of the matter is really interesting because he's trying to blame it on Hulkenberg and Tserriednich, which, based off of at least with Tserriednich and his record, if they dig it up, it's very possible they can at least, in the vaguest of ways, stick it to him. Also, we do see Benjamin's guardian Nenbeast, so this does 100% confirm that he's not being taken over by Hulkenberg. But yeah, so he really wants things to go along, and that he is saying that the king's letter is going to be written up as they speak, so he really wants things to get done as quickly as possible. But Boltzebek ends up going up face to face with Benjamin, and I keep forgetting how tall and large Benjamin is, and the dragon Zodiac is also really tall as hell. But he asks Benjamin flat out to his face, "You look pale. Are you alright?" But Benjamin says that there's no problems whatsoever, with a stern look on his face. And I like the bit of detail that Togashi is putting into Benjamin's face when he's making this declaration. But Kaiser instantly realizes that Benjamin is pushing this incredibly hard, and suspects that he is, and correctly so, that Benjamin is infected with the virus. And considering Hulkenberg's progression with how things are going with the virus, Benjamin has about 24 hours at most before things come to a head. And so, if they can somehow keep Benjamin from fully enacting martial law and taking full control for at least one more day, they'll be able to actually get through this, and that they still have a final stronghold. And then we also get a notice that it's been 40 minutes since martial law has been enacted. So, based off of Benjamin's dialogue, he has at least 9.5 hours before everything is said and done, to basically before he falls unconscious and eventually dies from the actual virus that he implemented onto himself. And what's standing in his way is the crime hunter Bezaiston Kaiser, member of the Judiciary Bureau, the Justice Bureau, and Boltebek, who is, from what I double-checked, is a terrorist hunter. Hey, editing Chris here. Really quick, just want to say that his name is Boltebek, not Boltebek. I don't know how I started saying that, but just wanted to throw in that correction, at least this late into the video, unfortunately. So I apologize for that, but either way, yeah. Boltebek, terrorist hunter, all that stuff. Let's just get back into the video. Just wanted to correct myself post-editing. So, if anyone is gonna, for more or less, figure out what's going on, it's gonna be these three characters. But they're gonna need proof. They're gonna need to hold on for at least a bit longer before anything else. Because Benjamin is close to being the next prince to just exit the game. And if they can hold off until he dies, or at least passes out, then they essentially have a much closer chance of winning. Also, based off of Kaiser's dialogue, it's heavily implied that maybe the loser's plan actually succeeded, which, yeah, we still need to go back in time to see what the hell happened during the negotiation game right beforehand for martial law to be enacted, because a lot must have happened to trigger this. One of which being Benjamin being affected by the virus. So, yeah, there is a lot to really consider with this aspect. But that was the chapter. Not only did we fully see how Borkson chose yes, we got more info that helps give us a better picture of Marina's abilities. We also see that Borkson has now become a major player in the succession contest in the Mafia War. Benjamin is close to death and wants to enact martial law and become the successor so his child can become the next king of Kakin. And we have two Zodiacs that are very specialized in criminal cases and, well, terrorist cases, facing off against a dictator, and we have a member of the Justice Bureau who kind of knows virtually everything that's going on to this point. So, yeah, Benjamin's got his work cut out for him, but we gotta see what's happening. But what did you guys think of this chapter, and how do you think things are going to progress further? I'm really excited for whenever Togashi comes back from hiatus and gives us the next batch of chapters, because if things keep going like this, we might actually be finished with the Succession contest within the next 20 to 30 chapters at least. I know it sounds like a lot, but still, with how things are going, we have a timer now. We have a full-blown timer for one of the major powers in play in this Succession contest. So there's a lot to really consider when it comes to that. When a timer is introduced, chances are things are going to start going back into a more fast-paced direction. And we still got to figure out what's going on with Phantom Troop, Kurapika, a lot of stuff still needs to be explored and explained upon. But let me know what your thoughts and opinions and how things can be done in the future with how Togashi has set things up in the comments section down below. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.